Hello and welcome to Cinema Savvy and a brand new episode of Battle of the Brackets. It's myself, George, and tonight, for some reason, I'm doing the introduction, and I'm also joined by Christopher Garner, Tate Inyawa, Naomi Sanders, and Ryan. Hello again. How are we all?
Hello there.
He's just Ryan.
Get a last name.
I just think there for a millisecond, and I realised, you know, when you miss your 1 second prompt to say it.
Yes,
it was like that. And I just had to have that awkward silence to hope no one brought it up. But anyway, we are doing Battle of the Brackets for our favourite episode / game show / angry mob.
Mostly
I wish we had a game show with like buzzers and like
rent out a studio.
Yeah,
when someone loses, they just drop them into like a Shark Tank.
Oh, you would love that, George, wouldn't you?
I was just about to say that.
George would win every time. There's no way he'd ever lose if he knew he was going to be.
I'm surprised that no one picked George for Summer Blockbuster.
I'm joking. I've been tied up by my family. There's actually one underneath me now. Yes.
Think twice if you need to come get you.
Actually, speaking of sharks, we'll have to bring that later on, but no one brought up Jaws. For those that don't know, we're doing best summer blockbuster, and we have to defy that. Everyone watching probably knows, but we just always have to double check. For those that don't know what summer is, it's a season in the calendar year. However, in film terms, it's basically May until the end of August, and obviously a blockbuster is like a high budget film, basically. And we get summer movie blockbuster season, which has just finished. And we originally prepped this episode when it was boiling, and it's luckily cooler now. We've had a very, very ridiculously hot summer. It's nice to have all these computers on in normal weather conditions, so we don't all melt and turn to Indiana Jones 4.
We don't mention that movie.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Indiana. I didn't mean to call it Indiana Jones 4. I was meant to call it Indiana Jones 1. I'm just used to saying Star Wars 4 when it's the first one.
You have no class, sir. How dare you?
Did anyone pick Indiana Jones 1?
No.
It was on my long list. I was tempted to, but
every film was on your long list.
Yeah, that's true. I had about 56 picks on my long list. Usually I have about, 8 or 9, and you whittle it down to 4.
I had 5, but then I had to chuck 2 out because they weren't exactly blockbuster.
I honestly think this is the most expansive bracket we've ever had. Like, we've had this idea for doing this a couple of months now, and it was almost too huge. I know there's been a lot of movies, but you can kind of chalk it up to Jaws, which I think came out, was that 74 or 75? I always forget which year that came
75,
out.
I think.
And usually, George said it, that summer movie season is usually midway through May, but just to make it fairer, we've done all movies that came out from May all the way through to the end of August. That's a lot of movies. That's a lot of decades. So it means a lot of movies on the long list, which we have all whittled down, which is in our final bracket now.
Yes, and if you look at the screen, as usual, I shall screen share the bracket so beautifully edited 20 minutes ago. I'm going to go through them as ever, Tate and Grease, a combination which I never ever for the life of me thought I'd pick.
You should have photoshopped Travolta's face out there and just replaced it with
just had his new had John Travolta's new face where it's like a Barbie doll the wrong way around. So the thing is, it's because he's never mentioned Grease. I was shocked. I love Grease though. I'll defend that. We have Tate and Grease versus Chris and Spider-Man 1. Me and Mission Impossible Fallout versus Naomi and Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Me and The Dark Knight versus Tate and Finding Nemo.
Yeah.
Naomi and Blues Brothers versus Chris and Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl. Naomi and Atlantis. Is it City of the Lost Empire?
No, Lost Empire.
Lost
Empire.
Just
the Lost Empire.
There's so many Atlantises I tend to forget. There's me and Spider-Man 2, so we have a bit of a Spider-Man battle going on again, potentially in the final. Chris and Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope versus, is it Tate and Back to Tate and Back to the Future. We have Chris and Jurassic Park versus myself with Harry Potter and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. I don't know what's wrong with
You should have picked the Half-Blood Prince.
You're not going to do well by arguing if you don't even know which film you're arguing for.
Half-Blood Prince, I believe, is one of only 2 Harry Potter films that came out in summer. I may need to double check that, but Order of Phoenix was summer as well.
Yeah, you should have picked Order of Phoenix then.
No, that's a poor choice.
Longest book, shortest film. Well done.
Yeah, the film's great though. The Sixth got the best book, but the unluckiest film. We have Tate, whose second pick was T2, Terminator 2, which if you saw the notepad, it looked a lot better on that because it just said T2, T2. And then we have Naomi with the amazing face. We have 2 John Travolta films.
I was just about to say, realised on opposite end of the. Can we have a Travolta?
Bookend.
Can we have a Travolta versus Travolta off?
and then like you finish, the referee is just modern day John Travolta, like touching people's faces at the
the wickedly talented, wonderful Adele Dazeem.
And then he like pinches her cheeks, and it's like really awkward, and everyone cringes inside. I guess we need to explain the rules then very briefly to any newcomers here to Battle of the Brackets tonight. So as we just explained, we basically argue each other's picks. You have a minute for your main argument, followed by the other person's 1 minute argument, and then it's a 30-second rebuttal each. We keep that going all the way through pretty much until the final, and it's as simple as that, and we see what comes out on top. So are we ready for the first fight, I guess?
Yeah. Tate is up first with Grease versus Chris and Spider-Man 1. Right, Tate, begin in 3, 2, 1.
Grease is definitely the word. And I have to say, when I think of summer-based films, this is the first one that comes to mind. I'm so glad that it actually was a reasonably sized blockbuster for its day. First of all, it actually grossed more adjusted than Spider-Man by quite a bit. Just off a $6 million budget, it managed to get, I think it's 380,000 its box office, which adjusted is just quite close to 1 billion. As far as the film itself is concerned, it is a masterpiece. It's still showing in cinemas today to show that it's got longevity, it's got the legs for it. It's enjoyed by millions of people around the world. It's a sing-along kind of event. You always get behind it, and you just fall in love with the characters they introduce you to and the world that they set you in, which once again has a very summery vibe to it. I love this film. I've been watching it since I was a kid. I watch it almost on a yearly basis. With Spider-Man, it hasn't aged well. Some of the effects are outdated.
Chris, 3, 2, 1, go.
Spider-Man, the first movie in the trilogy, not only sort of redefined the superhero genre, it also redefined summer movie blockbusters. Before this point, if we are looking at the superhero genre, we had X-Men, which came out 2 years prior, which in terms of its action, it was very restrained. That kind of vaguely put them on the map. And then Spider-Man just kicked the door in. And that has kind of set the stage now for what we come to expect from is something in the genre of like a superhero movie. You had a great origin story. It was bringing Spider-Man back for a modern audience at the time. There was that whole hullabaloo. Everyone wanted to see it with a 12A certificate. Like, this was a huge thing. This put Spider-Man on the map, and he was the crowning achievement of Marvel at the time. Offsetting that, you have an absolute phenomenal cast. I dare anyone to define a cast that's better in a superhero movie, especially its villains with the likes of Willem Dafoe, everything like that. And also in terms of the effects, like the CGI, this was groundbreaking stuff, which still looks fantastic to this day. Stuff we take for granted now in pretty much every...
Stop.
Sorry.
Tate, you get an extra couple seconds.
I didn't hear you say stop, sorry.
Oh, do you want me to go?
Yeah.
Okay, it hasn't aged well, Chris. I know that it was defining for its genre at the time, but it really hasn't aged well. The acting in your film is also extremely hammy. If you release these two films now to a modern-day audience, I think they would prefer Grease. Superhero films have evolved since coming from Spider-Man, and I feel like Grease, because it's still being shown in cinemas to this day, it's selling out performances. People are adoring it.
Stop.
People still love it.
Go.
There are also other musicals that are still selling out now, like Rocky Horror Picture Show. There were musicals that came out before Grease and after. Grease is a kind of dime a dozen. The thing that has lasted with Grease is the music, not so much the movie. If we're looking at a movie that redefines and is the best summer blockbuster, Spider-Man easily takes that because of what it did for the superhero genre, what it did for effects and everything we take for granted now in modern big budget blockbusters. This is what you expect. This is everything. It kind of took things from like old superhero movies, but it also redefined it for a modern audience at the time. And I think people would still love it. Warming up.
Right. I have one thing. I have one thing to add immediately. Tate, it's only higher for adjusted inflation on domestic box office, not worldwide.
Okay.
I can't find the adjusted worldwide figure, but Spider-Man trounces it because Grease's adjusted box office is less than what Spider-Man made in 2001.
That's fair enough. It was for the argument at the time.
No, I know. Right, has anyone got this mind up? Because this was a very hard battle because you've got two complete polar opposites.
I think I do.
Naomi, go for it.
It is a difficult one, and I'm putting my own bias aside to this. But I think Chris definitely had the stronger argument. I think Tate, you were a little bit too focused on when you were mentioning like the box office money to it. I felt that wasn't really necessary to your argument. You had to argue why it was the quintessential summer movie, and I didn't understand why that was needed. Whilst Chris did say about how Spider-Man helped with the superhero genre and all that. So, bias aside, I'm giving it to Chris with Spider-Man 1.
Thank you. We need to bring back the love for Sam Raimi.
We do.
No, I think I'm siding with Chris as well. Just to echo what Naomi mentioned. I think Tate, you just relied a little bit too much on facts. If you'd have just gone in for the kill a bit more on Spider-Man a bit sooner, because in your initial argument you only managed to get off like one sentence about why you didn't think Spider-Man was a fitting blockbuster rather. But I think Chris managed to argue really well over the course of his argument about why it was such a big film at the time, and the fact that it actually put superhero movies back into sort of the spotlight and engaged everything that we expect now from that genre with all the Marvel films we get. So for me, I think Chris wins this one.
For petty's sake, I would have also gone with Chris. I thought it was just a stronger argument overall on the two films. I like what he said about Grease. I've got a lot of time for Grease. I love that film. However, Chris's argument was slightly stronger, and to me, it got lost with too much focus on box office.
Okay.
I mean, Grease, for like anyone who like grew up in the UK, just like any wedding or party you go to, the Grease megamix is thrown straight on every time.
It's
Did she put up a fight? Well done there. You put rape culture into a 50s film. Whoa.
Let's get a dark R-rated gritty reboot of Grease.
Is it all just a hallucination as Sandy dies?
We could make it like I Spit on Your Grave.
Oh God!
Jesus Christ!
Everyone is zombies. It's Michael Jackson Thriller.
Tell me more. Tell me more. Okay. Moving on to the next round. I'm not sure who has the pick, but it is Mission Impossible Fallout. That's George.
It is George with Mission Impossible Fallout and Naomi with Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Are you ready, George?
I think so. Has anyone got time?
Yes, I do. 3, 2, 1, go.
Now, the only issue with Mission Impossible is that it came out literally 2 months ago, but it doesn't, sometimes films like The Dark Knight can have an instant impact that this is an instant classic, and Mission Impossible Fallout is precisely that. It's everything you want from a summer blockbuster. It's entertaining. You can sit down in cinema, have a good time. You know what you're going to get. It's a Tom Cruise film. You know he's going to do his own stunts, but this one, it brings you that extra sort of phenomenon of going to the cinema, seeing that sort of, what is that blockbuster film? This is, a man jumping onto a helicopter, real life stunts, climbing up, ending up piloting a helicopter to then take out another helicopter. That's just one stunt. This is a film full of many of them, and I think it's what you look for. With these blockbusters, you want something that is the sort of the popcorn munching film that you want to go home, chill out and watch, and this is that. It's got that repeat viewing. It has that sort of essential experience where you want to sort of see it on the biggest screen, kind of the stunts they're showing. And the best thing about it doesn't take you for a fool. You don't have to be intellectual at all, but it's not going to spend 30 minutes setting up a plot. It just goes straight into it with a click of a fingers, and it takes you in for a roller coaster of a ride.
Stop. And are you ready, Naomi?
We'll take that as a yes.
3, 2, 1, go.
Well, you say that Mission Impossible came out a few months ago. It doesn't exactly have the legacy that stand on as a summer blockbuster, especially since it could have been released any time in the year and probably would have still had people going to see it. And there's nothing which says summer about Mission Impossible. It's basically just what you were describing with the stunts. It sounded like the first one. Scott Pilgrim is very unique in its own right. It mixes nerdy culture with fantastic music, fantastic soundtrack. The first fight, Edgar Wright described this. Each fight is like a musical jumping into it, and everyone likes the musicals at summer. So why not have Scott Pilgrim with a cute love story, great characters, like I said, a fantastic soundtrack? It just leaps over Mission Impossible by many miles because it is unique and not the same as every Tom Cruise movie, especially not in the Mission Impossible ones, which are just all the same.
And stop. And George, go.
I will say the Mission Impossible Fallout soundtrack by Lauren Balfe is phenomenal. Let's talk about Scott Pilgrim, the financial bomb that nobody went to the cinema to watch when that came out. It made $48 million on a $90 million budget in 2010 or 11, whereas Mission Impossible is currently sitting on 670 and came out in a summer with the likes of Ant-Man, a big Marvel film. We had a massive billion-dollar film, The Incredibles 2. It fought against its competitors and has done incredibly well. And Mission Impossible is not like the others. They get better and better and better. And it's
stop and go.
Considering that you said it's a flop, yet people still go and watch it as a cult favorite. I mean, Rocky Horror Picture Show was considered a flop, and yet there's still a cult fan base. I bet you that in 2 years, 5 years time, no one will remember what Mission Impossible Fallout is. Whilst many people will still remember Scott Pilgrim, they'll still remember every bit of the soundtrack from Edgar Wright. They'll still remember each of the characters. They'll still remember each of the kind of fight sequences between the axes. There's everything. It's like a Bollywood film. It's a masala film.
Stop.
There's so much.
I'm just gonna let the dust settle for a second.
Who wants to go first?
I guess I'll go first. My immediate thought was that I think Naomi shot herself in the foot a little bit there in the last rebuttal when she actually called her film not a blockbuster but a cult classic. And for me, that's sort of
wasn't a blockbuster.
No, but you called it a cult classic, and I don't think that the two can merge. If it's a summer blockbuster, it comes across as how George said, big action, big stunts. It's got lasting, it's going to have a legacy because it's a franchise. Whereas Scott Pilgrim was a one-off, as George said, unfortunate flop. So in my opinion, I think George argued it just a little bit better, and I think that comment about calling it a cult classic just shows its legacy. Whereas Mission Impossible, everyone knows Mission Impossible, but you've just sort of summed up the legacy of this film as it's now going to be just known as a cult classic. So I think George is going to win this one for me.
I agree. A cult classic to me is a film that perhaps didn't do so well, wasn't really in the limelight, and then gained traction however many years after the fact. I'm basically reiterating everything Ryan just said. A summer blockbuster to me is wow, in your face, makes its presence known. And I know we kind of poo-pooed the whole box office gross argument, but I think George made that work to his advantage, how he worded it and everything like that. In that it was up against a lot of movies that month, a lot of big movies that month, and it still managed to do very, very well and gain a lot of traction that way. So in terms of sheer impact like that, why it's the best summer blockbuster, I'm going to have to give it to Mission Impossible Fallout as well. Sorry, Naomi.
For argument's sake, I would have given it to Mission Impossible Fallout as well. For me, the second George pointed out the box office numbers kind of spoke for itself. I do really, really love Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, but it is a cult film.
It's good fun.
Primarily. I will say as well, though, that this is the second time in a run we've dropped a reference to Rocky Horror Picture Show. Can we keep that going every single round? Or is that asking too much?
Someone needs to do a Tim Curry impression now.
No, I'm not doing it. Okay, let's move on to the next round.
I'm wearing it under this.
Chris, if you could go on timer for next round, because it is George with recently rewatched Dark Knight versus Finding Nemo.
Which we should all recently rewatch as well.
Finding Nemo is great. It's the only Finding Pixar film you need.
Yes.
Right. Okay. 1 minute on the clock for the Dark Knight. If you can possibly contain it to a minute, off you go. Go.
Right, Dark Knight. Where do you begin? Even Chris said you can't sum it up in a minute. This is without doubt not one of the defining blockbusters in the world. This is one of the most defining films in history at this point. When you look back in 20, 30 years, you look at these classic films: Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Jaws. From this century, at least, The Dark Knight is the only one that's in that category of itself. And this is not just a film that's it's not just this big summer blockbuster. This was the event. Every single person went to the cinema and saw Dark Knight. Everyone saw it. Everyone spoke about it. There's no one that comes out thinking, wow, Heath Ledger. I mean, he got the posthumous Oscar award. That's not just the fact it's a blockbuster film that does that. They don't really get appreciated like that in cinema. But to win it on a comic book film, and the best thing about this film is that it didn't even take the audience for granted as the typical superhero film. This took you for you as someone that's interested in the film, and they made it darker. Christopher Nolan made a Christopher Nolan film set in the Batman universe, and to release that in July, peak summer, that's the only film people spoke about from 2008. It's the only film people tend to talk about still to this day. It's wonderful, and it's changed cinema for the good.
1 minute for Finding Nemo. Take go.
Finding Nemo is one of just the absolute most adored films of all time as far as family kind of classics that there is. Pixar really did a number here. They took everything that they'd learned from the previous Toy Story films, from Monsters, Inc., from Bugs Life, and they completely improved on the formula, streamlined it perfectly. You've got a lovable character set. It's an adventure. It engages everyone on every single age level. I'm going to talk about The Dark Knight, especially seeing as it's fresh in its memory. The acting in some areas was extremely hammy. The "Where's Rachel?" What even is that voice? I mean, we look back on it at the time, it was a great achievement. That's great. But we start to kind of look back at it. It's a lot easier to critique it. And it's a lot easier to look back at it and go, well, actually, it is flawed. And there have been better superhero films since. And there have been better Christopher Nolan films since then. Definitely. So you can't even argue that it's the best Christopher Nolan film, possibly, than it being the best summer blockbuster of all time.
30 seconds, George, go.
It's very hard to say that about Finding Nemo. From based on your argument, it's not even Andrew Stanton's best Pixar film. His best Pixar film's Wall-E. And you got to look at this isn't the best Nolan film. I understand that, but this is Nolan's best film. This is the epitome. You look at The Dark Knight, the legacy. The DCEU gets worse as time goes by, and that makes The Dark Knight look better. Pixar goes from strength to strength. Pixar got better after Finding Nemo. It was better before Finding Nemo. It was Toy Story that really started that. Finding Nemo, you look at the Pixar list, it'll be there somewhere. It will just be there somewhere in the list. Top 5, fair enough. You look at The Dark Knight, think about films, superhero films.
Stop, take, go.
Yes, but your film only engaged people on a certain level. I know people who don't enjoy The Dark Knight. I haven't met a single person who hasn't said, oh, no, I really don't like Finding Nemo. It's one of those films that has had such a huge, long-lasting legacy, possibly even more than The Dark Knight. There is very little that you can actually critique about Finding Nemo as far as the film is concerned. The voice acting is perfect. The animation is almost flawless for its time. Whilst your film has little annoying things that are all throughout.
Ooh. That's the weirdest battle there's ever been.
It's like superheroes versus fish.
Oh,
that's a tough one.
As I went first the last 2 times, I'm going to volunteer myself to not go first this time.
Okay, I volunteer that Naomi should go first.
I went first the first time. Chris hasn't gone the first.
Ladies first. I'm being gentlemanly. Oh, am I like that one guy that has to step forward in a line of volunteers? Okay, right, okay. I don't think I got an argument from either person as to why it's a great summer blockbuster, particularly. I think the only hint that I got of that was when George mentioned about the July release, but I'm going to give it to Tate on this one by like an absolute fraction, in that I thought his argument was really... I loved when he says, like, now we can like look back on it and critique it and everything like that. And he mentioned about people critiquing Finding Nemo, and I honestly haven't heard anyone really badmouth Finding Nemo at all. And when he talked about appealing to a wider scope of people, that is what edged it out slightly for Tate. But I mean, George came out all on the offensive on the first argument and did manage very well to contain everything in 1 minute. But I thought it was an interesting perspective that Tate offered for his argument, so I'm going to give it to Tate on this one.
Naomi, you going to go or should I?
Yeah, I'll go. I'm really sorry, George, but I'm going to have to give it to Tate as well.
That's all right.
Inching it out there. Just because, like...
What have I done?
It's really hard to argue against like an animated Pixar film.
It is. I mean, the way that Tate said it, and the fact that we all laughed when he was critiquing Batman's voice, and everyone's had the critiques of Dark Knight, whilst everyone has probably critiqued the hell out of Finding Dory, which rightly so.
Oh yeah, rightly so.
Those scenes, just that kind of one of those perfect Pixar films that it's very rare to find a hater of it. Whilst I do know quite a few haters of Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. Looking at you there.
And Ryan too. Ryan's with me on this one, right? You're with me.
There are dozens of us.
They're multiplying.
Just for the sake of rounding up for everyone, I think I should have given that one to Tate too, and I really sympathise with George because it is so hard to argue against something like a Pixar animated film, especially those late 90s, early 2000s ones. They were like, especially for people our age, that was our legacy, isn't it? So, yeah, I mean, you argued it really well. It was very close, but I think the point Tate made, and I guess it's kind of an unfair advantage, but Tate's film could appeal to all audiences, whereas a younger audience, I don't know, like you couldn't really. I think it's only a 12, isn't it? The Dark Knight, or is it?
Yeah, it's 12.
12.
Yeah, it's a 12, but you couldn't take, maybe 7 or 8 year olds to see it, whereas Finding Nemo had a broader audience. So, but yeah, I mean, you both argued it phenomenally. That was a really close one. despite the fact that it looks like Tate won in a landslide.
Like
Do you wanna know a horrible fact?
I am going to take this time to retire from Battle of the Brackets.
There was a bit.
My
There was a
job is
bit
done.
where, like, there was a bit after Naomi said Tate. Tate laughed, and on my screen it lagged, and I was going to screenshot it, but I didn't go over to the keyboard quick enough, and he just had this shocked look of utter disbelief. It was
So
amazing. He was just
Batman
like,
loses.
he was like,
The
what?
fish.
Like,
I
Aquaman
managed
is
to
shooting
I managed to somehow out argue George on a Nolan film. That's
I
crazy.
say, I think that's what Tate's more happy about.
Yeah.
like his face before Naomi thought, he was like, oh, I think Chris is giving me a pity vote. I probably lost. And then you were just like, like.
No, I'm one for the pity vote because I never win.
Oh, don't say that. You might.
You've only
Don't
won
worry,
one less than Tate.
Yes. I haven't won since the first week, which
I haven't won any of them.
That's the
How's
point.
that?
I feel really bad because I took part in one and won it. So it's like.
okay, let's move
Can I
on.
just say, for any Americans, quickly, if you want to know how screwed the UK get for Pixar, we got Nemo in October, and the rest of the world got it in May.
Yeah.
I mean, we were kids, so we didn't care. But it's literally like every Pixar film, they screw us over.
Does that mean that
Counting
hold
on
on? Does that
that.
mean that I can argue for it as far as Winter Blockbuster as well?
No, don't go ahead of yourself.
October is
Winter
not winter.
Winter Blockbuster.
It's a
Let's be honest.
year-round
There's only one December film people love, and that's Star Wars.
No, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Lord of the Rings.
There you go. I was waiting for Tate's reaction, his look of death.
Okay,
Right. We're
next
moving
round.
on to the next
need
battle. We
Halloween
have
movies next.
Naomi with Blues
Naomi
Brothers.
and Blues Brothers versus Chris and Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl.
Mhm.
Are you ready, guys? Okay, good. You're up first. 3, 2, 1, go.
So, when you think of summer, you think of the sunshine, you think of going to different places. And what's more great than going to Chicago and celebrating blues and soul music? Not only that, but with two characters and going through it with amazing musicians like Aretha Franklin, Ray Charles, Cab Calloway. You get to celebrate that kind of music, but not just that, but have some really good comedy in the likes of John Candy, John Belushi, and Dan Aykroyd, and get to have great music and some fun action, especially at the end. With Pirates of the Caribbean, it's based off a theme park ride. There's not much you can really say about it, aside from the fact it's probably most likely Cutthroat Island, which was one of the biggest bombs to ever happen. It's basically just Cutthroat Island with Disney slapped on top of it. That's basically what it is. Whilst Blues Brothers was something unique and original and came from the heart, whilst Pirates of the Caribbean came from Moneybags.
stop.
Came from Moneybags
And-
Disney.
Go.
I tell you what's better than celebrating blues and jazz music with Dan Aykroyd and the other guy, Belushi. Swashbuckling fucking pirates and awesome high sea battle and skeletal pirates. Boom, right there. Also to the sultry sounds of Klaus Badell, presided over by Hans Zimmer. I could win the argument there. Also going to your theme park argument. This movie did the impossible. Everyone, yes, did go into it with that attitude that, oh, how can a film be successful off a fairground ride? Like, of course it's not. And guess what? It was. It spawned a highly successful franchise, which is still going today. Not to mention that, but like Johnny Depp's performance at the time, no one had seen a performance like this. He was Oscar nominated for his performance as Jack Sparrow. Everyone had a Jack Sparrow impression. Everyone was blown away by this movie and surprised at how good it was. Let's have a look at the legacy of your movie then, shall we? Blues Brothers 2000. I rest my case. That's where Blues Brothers died and ended with that movie. Pirates of the Caribbean, in terms of its location, shooting, its props, its costumes, it's an absolute marvel to watch even to this day.
And stop. And go.
You keep saying about swashbuckling pirates, but like I said, Cutthroat Island could have been a summer blockbuster, but what happened to that? But back to Pirates of the Caribbean, just because you have Jack Sparrow doesn't mean that your other characters have to be as bland as wallpaper, and they are, especially Will Turner. Whilst in Blues Brothers, your characters include the Blues Brothers Jake and Elwood, played by John Belushi, and how dare you spit on his grave by not remembering his name. Plus, when Aretha Franklin died, God rest her soul, what did everyone
And
share
stop.
about? They shared her performance of fake. They shared her performance of fake.
Hold!
Stop. Okay, that was like a 10-second overrun. Okay,
Apologies.
Can I get an
I love
extra
me some Aretha.
we're gonna go back to Chris. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, I'm going to go to the Orlando Bloom and Keira Knightley slur there for a second, because what this movie did was it took like all ingredients that we come to expect from summer blockbuster movies. You know, you have the love story in there, and some people might not gravitate towards it, but the point is they have a place in the story. They're there. Not to mention that it's a great adventure. It's a great story. It's Jack Sparrow out for revenge for getting wronged. You have a fantastic bad guy with Barbossa. It really is taking on all the qualities of a traditional swashbuckler movie, and that's why it works, and that's why it's the best Pirates of the Caribbean film. Blues Brothers is literally just the same string repeated. They go from person to person, recruiting them, and by the time you're like 4 car chases in, it's boring.
Boo!
I'm happy to go first.
I've lost, haven't I?
I want to say this is probably the most passionate argument I've ever seen. Even more so than Alan the Gungans. However,
hold on. How about I believe in Alfie Allen?
I believe in Alfie. Oh yeah.
Well, not for Predators, I'm afraid. It was very passionate. However, I think there was more diss on Cutthroat Island than there was on Pirates of the Caribbean.
I know, right? What's wrong with Cutthroat Island?
That lost me just a bit, but I just think Chris had too much ammunition. So I'm going to give it to Chris.
Give him a taste of the triple guns. Oh, wait, no, that's Dead Man's Chest.
The best Pirates of the Caribbean film.
Arguably.
Okay.
It's very good.
I'm going to say this now. Naomi, you should have attacked him on his sequels. Because Jesus Christ, Blues Brothers 2000, I've heard, is a terrible film. But some of the Pirates of the Caribbean sequels on Stranger Tides and possibly the last one could be considered pretty terrible as well. But saying that, Chris's arguments were way stronger in that one, so I'm giving it to Chris.
Thank you.
Told you.
And
is somebody going to pay for me to have like hearing aids? I mean, holy moly! I had to turn my volume down to the lowest possible setting.
This is what happens when you get a music journalist to talk about musicals.
Well, I'd like to credit your passion, but oh my god! No, you argued really passionately, but I think Chris, you just got too emotionally heated. Chris was able to keep himself in check, and the structure of the arguments was much clearer. Like I think George said, you just dissed on Cutthroat Island for quite a while, and Chris made some really good points about like the legacy of the first Pirates film, and then he brought up the legacy of the Blues Brothers, which is something that a lot of people will want to forget with the sequel. I love the Blues Brothers; it's a phenomenal film. But yeah, I think I would have had to give it for Chris just on the strength of and the balance of his arguments.
By the way, I wasn't pissing over Belushi's grave. It was a momentary brain fart in the heat of the moment. I apologise to him and his family and his friends, etc., etc.
Yeah, I hear his lawyers are going to be in touch with you soon.
Okay, so that is half of the board done. We are now going to move on to the second half. With the next fight is Naomi with Atlantis: The Lost Empire, and Spider-Man 2. And you know it's Spider-Man 2 because there are 2 people on the poster.
And the Doc Ock's eyes. Don't forget Doc Ock in the eyes. Not that you can see it this far zoomed out.
Okay, right.
Naomi, you're first.
Are you ready, Naomi?
Just going to preemptively lower my volume.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
We've discussed a lot about what the definition of blockbuster is, that it has a lot of explosions, a lot of action pieces. Here's a tip, here's a little hint, like facts about Atlantis. They gave out t-shirts which said, Atlantis, less songs, more explosions. This is the definition when it comes to summer blockbusters, especially by Disney Animation Studios. They were incredible with this. You look at the animation, you look at the different characters, you look at the score done by James Newton Howard by utilizing Gamelan. There are so many different action pieces, especially when it comes in the water parts, when it comes to Keita turning into the crystal. With Spider-Man 2, it's just a rehash of Spider-Man 1, and you could put it in any other season and then you would still have superhero films. Atlantis, it needs to be that kind of summer goodness. It needs to have that summer longevity, and many people my age still love it. Spider-Man 2, you got a lot of Spider-Mans there. Stop with all the Spider-Man. You're getting too confused.
And go.
There's 9 seconds of Spider-Man 2 that became one of the most immortal memories of cinema history. And that's how I felt listening to the first one. That's how I felt with that Atlantis argument. I'm sorry, but you said it defined a summer blockbuster. It opened up at number 2 to Lara Croft Tomb Raider at the American box office, which is people just went to watch Angelina Jolie in a tight top over this animated film. Even the kids probably wanted to see her more. Spider-Man 2 is one of the most iconic, not just superhero films of all time, one of the most iconic films of all time. Look at the advertising campaign, the posters, everything about it. You've got Alfred Molina dropping into the superhero genre, an established and wonderful actor who gave it a pop because why? He wanted to work with Sam Raimi on this outrageously excellent, beautifully crafted film. And you say this is the average superhero film. How many superheroes stopped being a superhero for a good third of the film? It adapted one of the most famous, iconic Spider-Man comics of all time. Even did it in its own shot,
and stop
put it into the film.
And go.
The reason why Spider-Man gives it up being a superhero is because it's too hard. And Amazing Spider-Man 2 did it much better because of his girlfriend dying. Whilst in Atlantis, they have the fallout. They have that dark moment because Rourke is an absolute arse who just wants money. You know, there's like actual characters and different aspects to these people. With Spider-Man, you don't really have what is the motivation for Peter Parker to keep kicking after Mary Jane.
And go.
The film spends 50 minutes explaining why Spider-Man can't be Spider-Man anymore. It develops its issues that he's not focusing on school and his job is getting sacked because the Spider-Man is too much to take for him. And talk about characters, you know, this is Peter Parker. This is Tobey Maguire's best performance as Spider-Man. As great as he is in Spider-Man 1. You've got an iconic cast. You've got brilliant scenes where Aunt May slaps him in the face. You feel the emotion where he has to say it's his fault that Ben died to get that emotional appeal. It's an emotional roller coaster. Everyone's forgotten about Atlantis. No one's forgotten about Spider-Man 2. 15 years almost later, it's still the best Spider-Man film.
I'm going to go ahead and give this to George. Again, he just had more ammunition in the argument, and I don't think you argued well enough for Atlantis as to why it's remembered and why it's the best summer blockbuster of all time. Because kind of it is ultimately a forgotten Disney movie. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Atlantis. It is a very, very underrated Disney movie, but the point is no one went to see it. And I don't think I got enough in your argument, Naomi, as to why it was better than Spider-Man 2. I didn't quite get what you meant by there are too many Spider-Mans around and everything, because it's still just Tobey Maguire. I didn't quite get that argument.
There's an influx of how many Spider-Man films are there out there.
And the first three are the best three.
This was the second Spider-Man film that had come out. I don't think it's hard for people to keep track at that point, but I'm going to give it to George.
Can I please say as well off the record, Amazing Spider-Man 2, he doesn't quit being Spider-Man. She dies at the end, and then what also died was that franchise.
Yeah, why do you allow me on if I'm absolutely shit at arguing?
You're not shit, you're passionate. You've won a couple of times to got to the semis and the final.
A couple.
Okay.
You've got a better record than Tate.
Almost.
Oh, Tate was just sitting there,
I
man.
need
That
to
was not
defend
nice.
What? I'm just going to take that line down.
Wait, when do I fight Naomi? I'm fighting Naomi in a couple of battles time.
Yeah, but you're going against Nicolas Cage going, Peach. Oh,
Tate's still riding the high of beating the Dark Knight. And even if he loses tonight, he'll have the satisfaction of beating George in an argument.
I'm not gonna lie. I've already won this entire bracket in my head just off that. So, okay, if we're gonna vote here, I'm gonna give it to Chris.
Wait,
George.
Chris!
George. Sorry, I was looking at
I would have argued for Spider-Man 2 as well. Like.
Chris, Spider-Man, you'll go through. Sorry.
Meanwhile, in Tate's head, it's just a replay of him winning to that last bracket. Not paying any attention to anything.
He's just been rewinding the live stream.
Yeah.
What is real life?
Yeah, that's why he's muted. He's just rewinding the live stream, watching it over and over. He's got it like hotkeyed, so he can just keep skipping back to the part where he wins.
Okay, so yeah, Spider-Man goes through. Sorry, I was getting mixed up with which Spider-Man pick was who.
No, dude, don't worry. Do you remember that time when I literally argued against the wrong character in the Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
Nothing could be as bad as that. Oh my god, that was humiliating.
Okay,
I remember that now.
Yeah, that was awful. It haunts
we
my
do
very
need to make like a best of the battle of the brackets, like pull together all of the best clips from it.
Well, the best episode never aired.
All the time.
The best episode never aired. I agree with that. The best episode never aired.
Who won? Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm sure Ryan would have also picked Spider-Man 2 as well.
I I would. I love how you said it like that. Have some confidence. But no, I would have picked Spider-Man 2.
I told you.
It's not.
I
It's
try
just-
and I fail, but hey, at least we have fun.
Okay,
That's the main
so,
thing that everyone enjoys it. No one gets upset, Tate.
huh?
Tate will never be upset again, right?
Yeah.
Someone could
Jesus
come up now and
Christ.
be.
There are people doing cocaine constantly, and then there's me up here.
So the crash will happen hard.
I've got a mountain of it,
Probably
Scarface
will.
style, right here, just in case I need to pick me up between the bracket.
Chris,
Okay.
save it for the Spider-Man final.
Shit. This is the tough one. This is the one that.
This is the fight of the round.
Oh,
Oh
This
boy.
is
Dreading
potentially
this.
fight of the night.
absolutely
is-
dreading this.
I'm
Chris.
dreading it as well because I don't think. I
Wait,
can
is
do
it
justice
you?
to this.
It's you two fighting, isn't it? I need
Yeah.
a time.
Good luck, Chris, because seriously, I have no idea.
Yeah,
They
I
would
just want to say
shake
good luck
hands,
to
they
everyone
could.
because this one's going to be absolutely insane.
Either that or it's going to be really, really, really bland. It's going to go one of two ways.
This is either ultimate disappointment. We had that last time. You two really disappointed.
So I'm not.
Not
angry, I'm just
today. Not
disappointed.
today. Yeah, not today. It was. I think last time there was a massive bracket and it was just rubbish.
I remember. Yeah, I
Um,
can't remember. It was a few brackets ago, wasn't it? Like it was all bigged up to the final, and then it just ended on a real whimper, and it was like, oh, is that it? Like we did this for 2 hours for that? Okay.
Yeah, it's like Finding Nemo. Is that it? Right. For those that don't know, it's Star Wars Episode 4 versus Back to the Future. It's Chris versus Tate. Chris is at first. Commence in 3, 2, 1. Boom.
The entire phenomena that is Star Wars started right here, 1977. If we're looking at other films that have come before it, you had Jaws like a couple of years before. But before this point, in terms of cinema, you had a lot of serious movies coming out, kind of dealing with Vietnam. Great films in their own right, but people needed that sense of fun. They needed that inspiring quality from movies again, where they could just go to a movie, have the escapism, and not be dawned by the realism of our world. They wanted to go to a different world, and that's exactly what George Lucas and team provided with Star Wars. It's really a film that needs no introduction at this point. It is a film that was crafted together, blood, sweat, and tears from everyone involved in terms of filmmaking. A lot of the focus goes to George Lucas, but in terms of everyone across the board who believed in this idea, this completely out there idea, yet that was still tethered to our own world. There was a lot of familiar elements to it, from other cultures to other prolific films in cinema that George Lucas was inspired
Stop. Tate, go.
What Star Wars did for cinema was it set a bar for a lot of sci-fi films to come. It's a very popular film. It's famous for being one of the birthers of the modern sci-fi genre. However, you have to give credit where credit is due here, and that's what with Robert Zemeckis did with Back to the Future. He took the sci-fi loving fan base that was Star Wars and he applied it to time travel, and he made people feel nostalgic for the past whilst at the same time making people fall in love with individual characters that would later on form another great sci-fi franchise. I genuinely think that what Back to the Future did was it took what came before it from multiple different genres, from 50s films, from comedies, from sci-fi such as Star Wars, and it just funneled it all down and made it into something which is loved by the entire world over. And with Star Wars...
Stop. Chris, go.
The thing is with Star Wars, it's malleable. You could show any aged person, whether elderly, middle-aged, kid, baby, anyone Star Wars, and they will get it and they will find enjoyment out of it. With Back to the Future, at the time, obviously an 80s movie would have had the 80s crowd there liking it, and it would have been nostalgic for people that grew up in the 50s, which is the time period it goes back to, for that age group. I guarantee you show that film to people now, most of the references will go over people's heads, and it won't have the same impact as it did 80 years ago. Even to this day, however many years on, 40 plus years on, Star Wars having the impact.
Hold on, you're talking about the impact that Back to the Future had. People started wearing Calvin Klein underwear, like out in the open, having slightly lower hanging trousers because of it. The impact that Back to the Future had was it set fashion trends. It set trends in the charts. It set trends in what people would go about in their way of life. Marty McFly was a character that you could get behind probably more than Luke Skywalker was. Sorry, that's the end of my argument.
Right, we'll cut it early. You still like 6 more seconds.
Yeah.
That was a
Do
very
any of
weird
us own
argument.
any Calvin Klein underwear, just for the record? Like, I don't think.
I think for our era, people that have their trousers below their boxers are the same people at school used to ask to borrow a pen, get E's, and they were going to do.
Saying
be like Miranda and just go behind them and pull up their trousers.
At the time, people did genuinely go and flood to the shops.
Oh no, we knew that.
Yeah,
but then you got to think, can of Star Wars? Right, that's not part of the argument. Anyway. Is anyone ready? Because I'm not. That was such a weird argument because those films deserve like 5-10 minutes each.
Yeah, I'm.
Did anyone get the gist of that?
No.
Ryan, you're awfully quiet.
Yeah, I'm just mulling it over. Oh God.
I'm going to go first. I'm going to weigh up the pros and cons. I'm going to think out loud. Both people defended their film and what it's done post-release, which is unparalleled. I guess those two. Well, maybe there's two of us that have a bigger iconic post-release. Anyway, I thought Chris's point was very, very, very strong on Tate regarding it's lost on the modern audience, in the sense that but then when he complimented, it was it Tate that said it was very nostalgic for people in the 80s that had parents that watched it. I don't know who said that, but that felt like an argument for Back to the Future.
That was Chris saying it.
Was it Chris that said it? I'm completely waffling on at this point because I genuinely.
That's how I always make my decision.
I'm completely undecided.
Flip a coin. Flip 3 coins.
No, Harvey Dent's dead.
In one universe,
I always stick to my principles of whoever has the. If I'm stuck, I always go for whoever had the best attack on the other person, and I've done that throughout the entirety of this series over the last 19 episodes. Because I don't feel that Tate attacked Star Wars enough. I felt that both arguments were as strong at defending their own property, but Chris ever so slightly edged it because Tate just didn't have enough to attack Star Wars with. So I have to give it to Chris on that one. And I'm just happy to get mine out of the way.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the hardest ones I've ever seen.
Yeah, I think
because each film deserves 5-10 minutes.
We looked at the bracket, didn't we? And we kind of all zoned in on that one.
I'm not gonna lie. If they were on opposite sides of the bracket, that could have.
They're probably near the final. Yeah, exactly.
I'll go next if that's okay.
Okay.
I'm going the other way. I'm going to give this one to Tate. He made there was a point he made, and it's completely slipped out of my head. What was it? Oh my God! Oh no, yeah, that was it. It was literally what he said about the effect that it had on people at the time that it came out, and for the time that it came out, that was the summer blockbuster to see. That was the way he sort of said it became part of people's lives in a way that Star Wars couldn't. And that's not a bad thing about Star Wars, but Back to the Future took a culture that everyone could see and everyone could get behind, and it brought everyone together. And I think Tate made that point really well. But Chris had, what was the point Chris had? George mentioned it too, that was really good. But I think it was kind of like, what was it that Chris said? George, that you said was really good.
Oh, how it's lost on the modern generation.
Yeah, I thought that was a really good point, but I think it's a bit unfair to judge them. I know it's a summer blockbuster, so I think it's a bit unfair to judge them on the modern audience when really it's possibly better to judge them on the audience that was there at the time. But I did think it was a really good point, and I think, yeah, I mean, Tate's won, but like only just for me, so really close. Sorry, Naomi, you've got a bit of a...
Yay, I get the decider. And I'm gonna go with Star Wars.
Oh my God. Shit.
Reasoning behind?
George made a good point. You didn't attack Star Wars enough, Tate. You were very good at defending your film, but you should have gone on the attack equally. And I think that Chris was able to do that, especially with the fact that you kept that. Ryan pointed that out, that he said that Back to the Future brought everyone together in a way that Star Wars couldn't. I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt right now. And it did start the big franchise, and no franchise has been like Star Wars.
This is all going towards my argument for next round. Like
that's why I've had to keep quiet about what Christian.
You're taking notes.
Okay, so unfortunately, I was struggling. I was clutching at straws of bad things to say about Back to the Future. It's one of my most beloved trilogies. It's one of my most beloved films. It's phenomenal.
It's such an. I mean, it's time travel, so people can bring up plot holes. But for me, it's such an airtight film, and that it achieves exactly what it sets out to do.
In terms of script writing, if you go by like a template or a blueprint to solidly write a script, you easily go with Back to the Future.
Both of those two films as well have phenomenal intros. Like the opening shot of Star Wars is one of the best in cinema history. Like it's phenomenal. But the Back to the Future one, where he plugs the guitar into the anthem, and that's phenomenal. It's so good. Phenomenal film.
Okay, moving on to the next round. We move on to who has Jurassic Park?
Chris, you up again.
Chris, you have Jurassic Park. You're up against the Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Why do I get two of the biggest films of all time back to back? For fuck's sake.
George,
Okay.
what did you do to rig the system?
Are you ready?
Chris is first, thank God.
Yeah.
Okay.
It will show that I'm confident if I say yes right from the gate. 3,
2, 1, go.
Okay, if we're going with Summer Blockbuster, you kind of just have to look to the director that started it all with Jaws, and that's Steven Spielberg. You can pretty much look at more or less any film on this guy's list, and he's pretty much hit all the Summer Blockbusters. But for me, there's one that stands above them all, and that's Jurassic Park. In terms of what this did for especially Summer Blockbuster cinema, in terms of its work on effects and visual effects and everything like that, it still looks great to this day, and they were learning new technologies that we take so for granted now in every movie that comes out. Every movie has CGI now and can do wonderful things, and it kind of all goes back to the mind power of Steven Spielberg and the crew that he had working on this film. He made the extinct possible. People see this movie and the dinosaurs look real and they feel larger than life, and they're there. Not to mention that, but in terms of the cast of characters and the sense of adventure and dread, it's everything you go to the movies for. There's little bits of horror in there, and it also appeals to kids. Like, kids love dinosaurs, and it's also got the adults in there as well.
Stop and go.
Oh, sorry, me. Harry Potter and the Death Hallows Part 2. Where do you begin? This is the film that defied our generation. We were going to the cinema for 10 years watching these films, and everyone gathered in July to see the final one, the last one. And it wasn't just a summer blockbuster. It was an event that everybody in the world saw. There's no record like Jurassic Park. This was breaking records left, right, and center when this film came out. So it's void to compare those. However, I think Jurassic Park opened the door to what's possible. And the issue of Jurassic Park is when you look at it, the franchise becomes so fluctuated, so downward since that is the peak, and that's a great thing. But Harry Potter, you've had so many great ones in a row to finish it with this that everybody saw. This is a film you've seen Hogwarts for 10 years, and to see it getting destroyed and battle finally come to the end of everything that you've seen before you, it was just the spectacle. And the fact that this film delivered upon that, this film gave you that defined ending, and there's no going back from that. This is what people waited for, and this is what everybody flocked to the cinema to see.
And go.
In terms of spectacle in the Harry Potter movies, it's not the most exciting one. There are plenty of other action set pieces from the previous Harry Potter movies, and the colour palette's very dark and muted anyway, that you don't really get to take in the majesty of what's going on the screen. Jurassic Park introduced you to this world of dinosaurs. It made them real. It made them lifelike on the screen. It put them on the screen. It set the standard for cinema after that, not just dinosaur movies, summer blockbuster movies. It made those technologies possible. With Harry Potter as well, it's a similar setting. It's a part 2 of the movie.
And go.
It's not a part 2 of a movie, it was the part 2. Everybody went to copy Harry Potter because they wanted the next Deathly Hallows Part 2, and it never, ever happened again. And Jurassic Park, you're right, it was this big success and whatnot. But say Harry Potter's got a bad colour palette. If you look at the timing of the franchise, the once was wonderful world of Harry Potter is dismal. Voldemort and his kind of Nazi followers, they've all taken over. It's a dismal palette, and you want the hero story. You want Voldemort defeat. It's what you've been waiting 10 years for. And this delivered on that, and it's become a legacy within itself. And if you look to the random ones, this is the perfect one to see. It's the ending, and it was the generations coming going. It's a hard one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go first on this one. Chris, I really loved your argument for Jurassic Park opening the door and being very accessible to kind of, well, everyone at the time, all the different generations, like all different ages. I think you also attacked Deathly Hallows Part 2 really well. Deathly Hallows Part 2 has some great action set pieces, and yes, it is coming to the end, so there is a lot of emotion behind that. But like for me, I have to agree, like there are better action set pieces in other Harry Potter films, and there are better outright Harry Potter films. So I'm gonna have to give it to Chris.
Thank you.
I'll go next, and I agree with Tate. especially when he said about the muted color palette. Having that kind of color palette doesn't make me think of summer at all. There's just nothing. As much as I adore Harry Potter, I would admit that's not the best Harry Potter film, especially one to come out in summer. Whilst Jurassic Park led the way when it came to animation, it led the way when it came to like CGI and the visual effects and the story and the different characters. As much as I love Harry Potter, you have to rely on the weight of the other films.
I saw every Harry Potter film at the cinema apart from The Deathly Hallows Part 2.
What? Why didn't you get to it? Like,
I did.
He was so upset he didn't want to go.
No, I just did not like the fact that they split it into 2 movies. I think as a script, it makes more sense to have it as like one straight through script. I think the break just disillusioned me with the franchise that I was already waning on, because I didn't grow up with the films. I grew up with the books, and then the films kind of came and I watched them. But for me, I think George had a fantastic argument in his rebuttal where Chris had to go at the color palette for the film. And at the time, I was like, oh no, that's a really good point. It is like a really dull color palette. But then George made the point that it's actually done with a deliberate and stylistic approach. I thought it was a really good argument. I think despite the fact that I don't really like the film that much, I think I might have given that one to George. I think the way he talked about it being that legacy and that summer blockbuster, and I mean, I must have been the one person in the world that didn't see it at the cinema. I think I would have actually given that one to George. But again, like with everything tonight, it's been very close. So.
Well, if Harry Potter Part 2 put you off, then God knows what you thought of the Hobbit trilogy. Splitting a movie.
I have some very negative thoughts about that.
Do not speak of that.
Right.
We got
one final battle for round 1. Let's be honest, Harry Potter can't be Jurassic Park. Let's be brutal.
I don't know. I thought you had it for a second.
Yeah, but George, until today, I never thought that Finding Nemo could beat The Dark Knight. So.
Strange things have happened.
But can fish beat the pirate sailing above it? We'll find out.
I do want to say, George, were you intimidated by that giant smiling shark on the picture?
No, he's a vegan, isn't he?
Yeah.
Meat meat.
The
the only obsessed vegan that doesn't do your head in. Without getting into politics.
I got it.
Okay,
let's move on before people find that one-liner. We have Tate and Terminator 2. We have Reddit would be on my side on that one actually. Tate and Terminator 2 versus Naomi and Face Off. Tate, Chris, are you manning the timer?
Yeah, I will man the timer.
Chris mans the timer.
Okay, so T2, a pick that was going to be mine, I might add, before Tate rudely stole it from me. Your 1 minute starts now.
Terminator 2 is the best action film of all time. Full stop. Don't even need to even argue that. And then it goes up against a film like Face Off, where you have 2 Oscar-nominated actors. In fact, one of them won the Oscar for Best Actor. And it's just flawed because it has such hammy acting. And the action that's actually in the film is awful. You compare that to the action set pieces that come with, like, the drain fight, or the fight through the drainway out in the open. The whole walking out with the shotgun, the roses flying. The cinematography for the film, for the film is phenomenal. The acting itself for an action film is actually quite good. Finally, we have a child actor who can actually act. You have Sarah Connor's character, who is the most badass female character, possibly bar like Ripley from the Alien franchise. You compare that up against almost a forgotten gem from the 90s that is Face Off, which really hasn't aged well when you look at the acting and look at the actual film.
1 minute for Naomi. Go.
Because it's so fun with the acting. This was John Woo's, I think, first US film, because he mostly stuck with doing Hong Kong action films, so he has the experience doing it. Whilst T2, that is not summer blockbuster to me. To me, you would have a fun action film where you could just enjoy yourself by going with John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, not sitting at the sofa basically tense off your ass because of Terminators. That's not, to me, that's not summer. And with Face Off, you get the fun action scenes, you get doves, you get Mexican standoffs in church. With T2, it's an action film, but you have to rely on the previous one for this. Face Off, you don't have to. It's its own film, its own product, and people, as you say, still love it today. It has that legacy that people can still go back and love it, whilst Terminator 2 Not something I would think of
Stop.
Summer.
30 seconds, Tate, go.
It was John Woo's first action film in the US. Okay, he didn't do a good enough job, I'd say. I'd say that he did better with his Asian action films that he did whilst he was in his earlier directing days, and he's done better films since, I'd say. You can't really argue against the action that is involved in Terminator 2. But I have to say, who doesn't find Terminator 2 fun? The thrill of the chase, the fact that the characters are permanently being chased by this unstoppable killer. How are they going to escape? That's the whole fun of it.
30 seconds, Naomi, go.
Because everything is just so tense, you never really allow yourself to have fun because you're always worrying about Robert Patrick. With this, you get to have like the enjoyment of seeing Nicolas Cage go crazy. You get to see John Travolta going crazy with an interesting story. John Woo knowing what he's doing when it comes to action. Whilst in T2, I'm sorry, but Laurie chases. Really? You want to do that? And the fact with the ending that it just ends on a sour note, whilst in Face Off it ends on a big climax with exploding boats.
Time. Can I go first?
Yeah,
I've lost, haven't I?
Yes, Naomi. Yes, I do want to see Laurie chases, and I don't know about anyone else, but I think Arnold Schwarzenegger walking out to Bad to the Bone after taking out an entire bar full of goons is fun. Hasta la vista, baby. John Connor teaching him to smile. All little things like that make it fun for me. That's my bias alone. If I'm going with arguments, I think Tate did hit the points more in terms of how the action's constructed, the set pieces, and I really liked his point about the previous John Woo movies as well. No love for Mission Impossible 2, though. I think I'm the only guy on the planet.
No, there should be no love for Mission Impossible.
There should be no love for Mission
It
Impossible.
contains Limp Bizkit. Of course it should be hated.
And Metallica, it's fantastic. I love that movie. And that also has dubs
You
as
are
well.
wrong, sir.
I think Tate just came out all guns blazing. Naomi, very, very passionate, but I think that Tate kind of covered more points as to why Terminator 2 is a better summer blockbuster.
I was fighting against Terminator 2. How was that fair?
Also, I will say for the record, like, I mean, some people might be different to me. You said about it relies on the first one. T2 was the first movie I saw. I saw that before I saw T1, and I could follow it fine because I think it is kind of still
Work standalone.
I have the best Terminator viewing record. I have Terminator 3, Salvation, 1, 2, Genesis.
Is that the preferred order of watching?
That's like the machete cut of Terminator.
I think
Make sure to include Spy Kids with that.
Go on, Ryan.
I think Chris made a really good point when he said I think Naomi attacked lorries as a bad action piece. I think you should go and ask George Miller about whether lorries would make a fun action movie.
Or The Dark Knights.
Yeah, I mean,
don't forget.
for me, like Chris said, I actually saw Terminator 2 first, and I found it okay. And I watched it as a pretty young kid. Like I watched it when I was about 8 or 9, I think, when I watched it, and I had such a fun ride with it because it just pulls all the stops. That lorry chase scene where it starts off with he's on his little push. It's not a push bike, is it? It's just like a little
moped thing.
Moped type bike.
Yeah,
and I loved it. That scene's one of my favorite scenes because it just stuck with me so well. And then it's just when Arnie rides in and just pulls him off it and puts him on the bike. It's such an iconic moment in the film. It's a phenomenal action film, and it is. I mean, for me, it is what a Summer Blockbuster should be. You go in, you have fun, like you don't really think about it too much. And I'm sorry, I just have to give that one.
Why do you guys invite me on if I'm just going to lose all the time?
You don't lose all the time. You don't always lose all the time.
Well, more often than not.
I want to come out and defend Face Off because no one seems to have any love for Face Off.
I love Face Off. Face Off's fucking great.
It's just unfortunate that it was paired against Terminator 2. Like Face Off could have done well against probably any other except the other action film. But on that, sorry, I'm just stalling time.
I would have loved to have seen Face Off versus Grease.
I'd have loved to have seen
Travolta
the Face
versus
Off.
Travolta.
I'd have loved to have seen the Face Off characters in Terminator 2.
Ooh.
Like, forget that stupid
Ready,
John Connor kid.
ready for the big red
I'd love to see Nicolas Cage in any Terminator movie.
As
Make
the
Nicolas
Terminator.
Cage the next Terminator.
No, there will never be a more terrifying Terminator that's come back in
That's
time
the
than
reboot
Nicolas
we
Cage.
need. That's the reboot we need. Where's Hollywood funding that one? Come on, get it together, guys.
Let's make a Kickstarter.
They'll get round to it. They do them every 2 years now. Right. So at the end of round 1, we
I'm
have
out.
a map. Okay, that's happened. Tate's done that before, though, so it's not.
Yeah, I have. So Chris has done that before as well. Done out round 1.
Oh yeah,
Once,
no, loads of times, loads of times.
Okay.
I really like that pairing of Finding Nemo and Pirates of the Caribbean, though. That's pretty nifty. I'm not going to lie. I do like
because
that.
it looks like Johnny Depp shooting upwards at the shark.
Hang on. You got it wrong because you put Atlantis going through when it's Spider-Man 2 on the.
Oh no, I put the wrong red cross. Sorry, that's my bad.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Spider-Man's still in the bigger picture.
I was about to say, yeah, on the right-hand side, it was almost clean. Same with the left-hand side.
Yeah, that's my bad. I'll switch that for the next round. Apologies.
Okay, I'm going to go to the
looking.
You guys
having a toilet break.
The round.
So let's just look ahead to round 2 so far. We have Spider-Man 1 versus Mission Impossible 6. We have Finding Nemo versus Pirates of the Caribbean, which I don't know how on earth that's going to go. Spider-Man 2 versus Star Wars Episode 4. And Jurassic Park versus Terminator 2.
That's the tough one. Actually, Spider-Man 2 versus Star Wars is they're all going to be tough in their own way. Finding Nemo, I actually think, is kind of the
dark horse, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
The dark horse because you physically, it's hard to.
All these other ones are kind of just like very dark and gritty when it comes.
Yeah, it's like when you look at the color palettes on the little images.
It's just like a fish.
I think, like, deep down, like, all of us love Finding Nemo, and it's a very important part in our childhood. So
I went to
rage against
Australia
it
when
is
the film
kind of
came out, so I was pretty much in Finding Nemo land with that film having all its promotional stuff. So that was just fantastic. I must have been about 7 when I went there, and I actually like snorkeled in the Great Barrier Reef, which is amazing. Awesome. So it was like amazing. Do
we have any comments on the video at all? Has anyone been watching us, or have we just been talking into the ether?
Yay!
Well, we've had decent views, but we haven't had many comments. So we've had Sheila as usual, but obviously she says she has to go back and forth with obviously what's happening at home.
Yeah.
And she put That Got Dark Quickly, which was about the which comment was it? It was about the Grease one. That's what she put. But except for that, everything's good to go. We are ready for another round. And up first, we oh shit, it's me. Up first, we have Christian Spider-Man 1 versus
fight because then I just get to sit back and watch you guys.
Oh shit! Am I going for? Oh yeah, I'm going.
You're first. Christian Spider-Man 1 versus Mission Impossible 4.
Okay, I'm on the timer. Are you ready, guys?
Yeah.
Okay, I have 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, now I've got on record, obviously, I've said that Mission Impossible Fallout is a great movie. I think why Spider-Man has the advantage of being a better summer blockbuster movie, though, is because at this point, Mission Impossible is 6 movies in, and it's a formula we've come to expect. Spider-Man actually changed the game in terms of its own genre, which is very rare for a film to do. As I've said before this point, we had X-Men, you had your old school superhero movies as well. This reinvigorated superhero movies for a new generation, and I do believe that without this movie, you wouldn't have the likes of the summer blockbusters that we have today, such as Infinity War and all the other slew of Marvel movies. This really set the standard of what could be done in a superhero movie, pushing the envelope with the visual effects and the characterization as well. I will say, although it revitalized, it is very steeped in the structure, I would say, of the original Superman movie, which is another great superhero movie in its own right. So it was taking stuff from the old and also putting forward a solid origin story for this new take on the Spider-Man character.
And stop and go.
One thing I'd have to say, Spider-Man wasn't the first big superhero film of that, not even in that 2-year period. X-Men, I believe, set the standards for what was to come and was that first one that revitalized the superhero movie genre. However, Mission Impossible, you're right, 6 films in, there is a certain genre. However, if you look at how this franchise has gone, very few franchises get better and better and better. But what this does, it isn't just physically better, it's the stakes, the writing, the performances, the characters are growing stronger. Everybody's growing within this film, and they've reached a certain point. It goes, how did they get it better than the last one? And they still did, because Christopher McQuarrie is a genius. If you look at the storyboarding, everything in this film is done. He doesn't want to use CGI, of course. Naturally, like Spider-Man, they try and do stunts, but they have to use CGI for 1 or 2 moments. But with Mission Impossible, you watch it and you just feel like you're involved. You feel like it's real. With Spider-Man, at the end of the day, you don't feel like you're there. It's like, oh, this is really awkward, petty love story. Mary Jane screaming every minute. Mission Impossible, you've got a character who's the female spy that she can stand by herself. Mary Jane holds back.
Go.
even in terms of its own series, Mission Impossible Fallout has taken a more gritty, somber take on the Mission Impossible franchise. There are Mission Impossible films that are way more, that would appeal more to a summer blockbuster in terms of being fun. Spider-Man is fun. It absolutely is. And it is very faithful to the comic book. Like, it is chasing after those stories, the damsel in distress, going after like the Gwen Stacy stuff, Mary Jane, similar story beats like that. You had a fantastic cast as well. Everyone is in it for the ride. Everyone's having a great time in it. And it shows in the final product.
And stop.
It really does.
And go.
It's the exact same Mission Impossible. You can't watch the film without having fun. It is darker, it's grittier, but there's that lightness within. That's what this film focuses on. All the action set pieces, you know, it's daylight, it's fun, it's not dismal, depressing like what the previous Mission Impossible films were. This took it to that next level. The motorbike chase around Paris, the running around London, Tom Cruise doing his own stunts. If Tom Cruise was in Spider-Man, he would have literally done his own stunts. Tobey Maguire doesn't have that. That's something for your protagonist to have on his side. It gives you that sense of realism. Wow, he actually did this. Spider-Man, you know it's a stunt bloke, or you know it's someone else, or it's CGI. You know that every shot of Tom Cruise is him.
So, George, did Tom Cruise do his own stunts?
Yes, he did. And he runs.
I just couldn't catch that with the amount of times you said it.
I only said it once in that one, didn't I?
You said it many
You said it
times.
multiple times, dude.
In that 30 seconds?
Yeah.
You said it at least twice in the 30 seconds.
I thought I said it once.
No, you said it.
He's
a lot.
reinforcing the point. There's nothing wrong with that. I do it all the
Yeah, it
time.
helps my case.
Why am I sticking up for you?
I'm
against
sorry.
you. No, actually,
Sorry,
I said it
Chris.
twice.
Tom Cruise isn't allowed to do his own stunts. Yeah, that's that argument done.
He didn't do his own singing in Rock of Ages.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. He trained 5 hours every day. And you know what? He's not bad. I'm going to defend Rock of Ages. That's one of my favorite movies. I adore that. I adore
Hate!
Wait, sorry. So
Cruise is a
are
legend.
we fighting Rock of Ages versus?
I will fight Rock of Ages in a bonus round just for shits and giggles.
Bonus round, 30
Give
seconds.
it a couple of years.
Right.
Give it a couple of years. You'll have best bracket, the best Tom Cruise stunts.
Oh, we could have that right now. Oh, not stunts, performance maybe. We could do that bracket right now. Not Magnolia.
I was about to claim Magnolia.
No, you will lose horribly. Okay, people can
Back
wait.
to yeah. Has anyone made an opinion yet?
Hey, Tate, why don't you go first?
Because I've been first a couple of times now. Okay. Okay, fine. I will go first. That was really good argument, actually, on both sides. You attacked each other's films very well. I know it's very difficult because you both love these films quite equally.
We love the other film equally as well.
Yeah.
As far as the actual argument was concerned, I can't believe I'm saying it. It's so new, Mission Impossible Fallout, but you really are selling me on the film itself.
I haven't seen it yet. Is that what you're telling me?
I haven't seen Mission Impossible Fallout yet.
Neither
You know, you could have stayed at the IMAX on Wednesday. We could have done back to back.
I had to
I've
go
been
to
down.
the airport, sadly.
You know, Tom
But-
Cruise took you to the airport.
That was,
Hey, you had to get to the airport in about 40 minutes. Did you Tom Cruise run like the entire way?
Well,
He runs across the entirety of
Hold
London
on,
in that
I
film.
do want to say I was given 40 minutes to get across London. I managed to do it in 25, so
Nice.
happy with that. But seriously, like the way you're talking about it, sure, it may be a grittier film, but that's kind of what we're coming to accept nowadays as far as blockbusters are concerned. And it does kind of fill that void of that's exactly what I want from a blockbuster for me. I would enjoy a fun film like Spider-Man, like you said, and I do agree Spider-Man is a fun, energetic, cartoonish film. But from selling those two films to me, I've got to go for Fallout.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go next. I'm actually gonna go for Spider-Man
Yes.
because of Chris's argument saying that it was more fun for the summer blockbuster. That's what I think of when it comes to summer blockbusters. Sure, you could have gritty when it comes to blockbusters. When I think of summer blockbusters, it's that kind of explosion with happy dance, hooked on a feeling kind of thing.
It's
And
the explosion when Green Goblin throws a pumpkin bomb into a balcony and turns everyone to skeletons.
It's friction by Imagine Dragons.
By the way, George, why didn't you argue against Willem Dafoe as a villain?
What are you
That's
trying
flawless.
to say?
You picked the wrong guy to argue this with. Fight, fight, fight.
Oh my god, do I need to take 5 minutes? Do I need to let you guys settle? Or-
I'm not going to go into it, but I'm going to say is when I met Willem Dafoe, I switched my pen for green. If anybody wants to know how much I love the character of Green Goblin, then that's the only description: switching a pen to green. I cannot say anything.
Then again, what is Green Goblin's motivation?
Revenge, because the company fucked him over.
He's just insane.
Yes, and he's great. That's why you cast Willem Dafoe.
Or Nick Cage. Those are the kind of two.
Oh, that would be great as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have preferred Nick Cage to be Green Goblin.
I guess it falls to Ryan then for the tiebreaker.
Oh my god. I still haven't decided. That's how close it was. Like that was such a well-fought argument on both sides. And you can tell that you both have so much respect for for the other person's films.
We often do. When me and George fight, we were always against movies that we love.
You're kind of saying something, but you can see on your face, you're like, I can't believe I've just said that about this film.
I did have that with Tate as well, with Back to the Future. It was like,
I think, oh, God. I think I'm in the same boat as Tate here. I think because I haven't seen it either, but George is just arguing it so well. He's really selling me on the whole blockbuster sort of ethos that this film's created, and the fact that it's an action film with stunts and it's like high wire, it's like high risk. So you both argued so well, but I think George just has to take it. I think, oh God, no.
I'm shocked.
George will seriously be some sort of like film lawyer with the way that he argues for the.
George, you've got to bring Raimi home with.
Can't fight the friction.
Not in the movie. Not in the movie. And I was really disappointed that song wasn't in the film.
Spider-Man is that struck a nerve to take that film down.
It's fine. I love Fallout 2.
Don't worry, you're arguing for Spider-Man 2 later against Star Wars. Good luck with that.
Right. Can we just get to the next one while
let's do it.
Not Jaws. Sorry, Finding Nemo versus Pirates of the Caribbean.
To be fair, the poster.
Now it's smaller. Just a giant shark. You think Summer Blockbuster? You think big shark, big film has got to be Jaws, right?
If anything, the shark from Finding Nemo is probably more realistic looking than the one in the actual Jaws movie.
Yeah.
I saw an article saying that Jaws is outdated as a horror film, and I might not like Jaws, but there was loads of film directors tweeting this article and taking the piss out of it.
These two films came out in the same summer.
Yes, they did.
Oh, I don't even know what came out on top on box office.
I think it was Finding Nemo. But that can't be your sole argument. Right, let's get to the argument.
Finding Nemo's got more money, therefore it's...
Oh, wait, am I doing
He's just going to bring up the whole IMDb page at this point.
Right. Oh, this is going to be a really tough one. Timer, 1 minute on the clock, starting for Finding Nemo first. 3, 2, 1, go.
Finding Nemo is a lot more than just your standard blockbuster and family film. The story itself is an adventure of a father trying to find their lost son, the only thing that he really has that he can hold dear in the world. But not only that, but it's a journey of self-discovery that our main character goes on during the film. It really does allow people to actually learn a lesson from the film, which is something that is always good from kids' films or films marketed to kids or films marketed to family. There's got to be something that it's focused on. It didn't need the big amounts of action that could have been in the Pirates of the Caribbean film. It had good storytelling, which carried it all the way through the film. It had brilliant cinematography, it had brilliant musical score, which could be rivaling the Pirates of the Caribbean one, maybe except for one single tune, which everyone loves itself. The problem I have with Pirates of the Caribbean is that it rides and dies on Jack Sparrow. He is the one character that you can actually get behind, one character who is enthusiastic. You look at the actual storytelling that it uses in the actual film, and it's all jumbled up.
Time. Chris, go.
You talk about Finding Nemo being all this and a very special Disney animated film, Pixar animated film. If you break down the formula of that story, two unlikely heroes trying to get back to a kid, guess what? They did it with Toy Story 1, they did it with Monsters, Inc. It's the same exact formula repeated with new colorful characters, and that's it. With my pick, I need to check what my pick is, actually. Pirates of the Caribbean. There we go. No. Pirates of the Caribbean. The reason that it's a better summer blockbuster is because it took a chance. It's a gamble that we never see in cinema now, and probably we won't see since after this point. It banked on a fairground ride. It went and did it. It got the cast that it did, put the story forward, and everyone loved it and spawned a hugely successful franchise. That is pretty much unheard of. And for that, I'd give it to that alone. In terms of location shooting, in terms of what it did for visual effects with the skeletal pirates, really groundbreaking stuff. It was really pushing the envelope. And I don't believe it rides and dies on Jack Sparrow alone. He is a very entertaining character, but you have very memorable side characters.
Stop.
You have a great villain.
Go.
Very memorable side characters that have terrible spawns of dialogue. And sure, it was taking a risk off an action-based ride, but it's a pirate film, it's an action film, it uses explosions. There have been films like that before. Maybe not to the extent of Pirates of the Caribbean, but what we're looking at here is Pixar finally finding something that can streamline into its rhythm. It had some good films before it, but I really think that with Finding Nemo, it truly found itself in an area where it could pitch it to everyone. And
Stop. Go.
The pirate genre, the swashbuckling Sinbad and the pirates kind of genre, it was a dead genre at this point, and I'm going to say genre one more time. The bankable family animated film was been done to death by this point. So the reason that Pirates of the Caribbean was a success is to be praised. It took a chance in it being a fairground ride, and also the genre that it was with. It changed the game. It really did. People really took to this. They needed that swashbuckling action adventure. It was brand new. It got people back into pirates again, and everyone loved Jack Sparrow, and he was praised for the performance, quite rightly so.
But my film got more money. I want to just point out the fact: how on earth did you not know what you're arguing for?
The second momentary brain fart of the night. First with Belushi, and then this with my own pick.
Chris, I was about to say, is it just that corner of the bracket that you're having problems with?
No, I'm good. I'm going to be honest. The reason that I blanked was I was looking at my Disney shelf, trying to think of all the previous movies with that formula. So I didn't even have an argument for Pirates of the Caribbean in my head at that point.
I would have laughed out loud if you had Spider-Man.
I was just there, and he was like, and with my pick, and then
I was holding the time and waiting for that spark to light, and it didn't. I had to click the link. But
I was actually ready for to be cancelled. Tate wins, but
imagine if Chris had managed to win that without actually never naming his film.
Oh my god.
Well, I've decided I'll go first, and to be honest, I think Chris did actually win, even though he forgot the name at one point.
Rookie error.
He actually blew my mind by saying that at that point, Pixar had pretty much repeated their formula. I was like, wait, what? They had! And I mean, one argument I should have used when I was arguing against Pirates of the Caribbean, the fact that LucasArts actually did the whole love story and a pirate setting better in their own video games of Monkey Island. But yeah, I mean, the way that Chris was able to defend pirates, and you kind of lost me, Tate, a lot of the time. I don't know if your arguments were really there altogether. I think you were just running off the tracks, as it were. So yeah, I'm giving it to Chris.
Thank you.
I am giving this to Chris. I am literally shook at that pick, and that you had to think about it for a couple of seconds.
I blew my own mind with that. I was like, I'm going to get a damn argument out of this.
And then the issue is, I think Tate helped Chris's argument when he said, this score maybe rivals the Pirates of the Caribbean score. And I was like, well, that's helping the other case. And he said it again later on that I forgot what it was. He said something about Pirates of the Caribbean that maybe mine's as good again, and it gave that. But I think Chris had too much of an attack. And he did too much for it. But that Pixar revelation just blown my mind. That won it. The second that was said, because that's all I can physically think about. I'm just trying to think about how many of the Pixar films now have done that. Post that film as well.
Oh, no, not so much Coco. Oh, God, I can't think. It's always two unlikely heroes anyway, trying to do something.
It's some sort of road trip.
Technically, there's 3 unlikely heroes, because you've got 2 different...
shut up, Tate.
Tate, you didn't talk about the actual fish.
No, I didn't.
Why don't you bring Willem Dafoe?
I found the link that links both of these films together. Jeffrey Rush. There we go.
Wait,
not Willem Dafoe.
Jeffrey Rush plays the pelican in Finding Nemo.
Does he?
Yes!
Does he?
What? No.
I knew there was a link. I just had to think of it. Yeah, there we go.
Hang on, I'm actually looking up IMDb right now to double check.
Look away, it's Jeffrey Rush.
My mind has been blown once more.
You might hear a little squeak from me because I do love me some Jeffrey Rush. Hang on.
Especially in pelican form, or just.
No, he is Nigel. I don't believe it, but he was.
Just a cheeky little bit of movie trivia there for those folks at home who didn't realise.
Okay, moving on to the round.
Oh God.
Haha, Spider-Man 2 versus Star Wars. Good luck.
Ooh.
Oh, Ryan, what would you picked?
Right, Tate, you're going to have to man the timer for this one, please.
I'm on the timer. Are you ready?
George is up first for Spider-Man 2. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
I think when you look at Star Wars, you've got to think of one thing, that over time, that franchise has got better. And when you look back at these other films, it's because these future films has led to the impact of making that one film better. Hypothetically, look at the character of Doc Ock in Spider-Man 2. He's a villain. He's a very, very sympathetic villain. You know, you see his origin on screen, the tragedy of losing his wife and that he wants to get it right in her honor. You see that origin and that creates a massive impact. And you see that, you know, Peter Parker's involved in that. When you watch episode 4, contextually alone, out of awareness, it's just, you know, it's wonderful. But Darth Vader's just a bloke in a suit, and you don't know anything. It's just the guy in the suit with the lightsaber. You don't feel anything in those scenes with him. It's just that villain of the day. It's the future films that make him who he is, not this one film. And then you get the rest of it. Spider-Man 2. It's you think Summer Blockbuster, Star Wars did create that. That's its own right. However, it's the other films that take this forward. And when you go to, you know, Star Wars was the only really big film from '77 in that Summer Blockbuster. So it's hard to compare it to 2004 when you get these big films.
And go.
You criticize the simplicity of the character roles and character archetypes, but that's really the genius of the original Star Wars movie. In that, as I said before this point, in cinema, you had very somber, very real movies. This escapism, by going back to tried and tested story elements, you had like knights, you bought in from like World War iconography with Nazis for the bad guys. It was taking elements of all real world things and elements that people were already subject to, crafted it into its new thing and made it palatable. And this movie blew up. Everyone took to this movie. It's an absolute phenomenon. It's still going today. And it all started from this movie right here. It was that pure escapism. It is purely, in essence, the definition of what a summer blockbuster should be. A fun action romp with likable characters, and the hero saves the day. That is what you want from a summer blockbuster, and Star Wars absolutely defined it. Spider-Man 2, by this point, the superheroes were starting to pick up, the superhero movies. And in terms of like the hero abandoning his destiny, again, it's like been done.
And go.
Everything you said about it wanting from a blockbuster, fun, all of that, that's exactly what you get in Spider-Man 2. I was thinking about Spider-Man 2, and you know, you said, oh, Spider-Man Super has been done. Of course it has. Your one was a new thing for sci-fi, but it wasn't the best sci-fi film of the 10-year period that followed. There are much better films that came out. Superhero films. Spider-Man set a new standard to come, which films had to rise to. Star Wars, it was done, it was first time, and it got better. Best summer blockbuster, it's not even the best Star Wars summer blockbuster film. Mine is the best Spider-Man film, period, and it's one of the best blockbusters, most enjoyable blockbusters in the last 15, 20 years. And then you've got the wonderful Danny Elfman soundtrack.
And go.
Danny Elfman absolutely hated his time on Spider-Man 2, had a miserable time with loads of recycled themes. In terms of all what Spider-Man 2 did, it added a couple of new action scenes in and a new villain of the week. Star Wars absolutely changed cinema. It changed summer blockbusters and changed what people come to expect from movie making and from the action, some of the most iconic shots in movie history. You said a terrible villain. He's arguably the most iconic villain of all time, rightly so. Everything you get from this movie isn't. Oh, okay, yeah.
So disappointed to finish that.
Incomplete sentence.
I feel dirty.
I'm.
Wow.
I saw the horror in your face when you just slated that.
I'm gonna go first on this one. I'm giving it to Star Wars. The drawing of elements from every single film genre to pass to make this kind of ultra blockbuster. It really it does sum up what Star Wars really is. And then, yeah, I didn't actually know that Danny Elfman had troubles on Spider-Man 2.
That's why he left the soundtrack, because he didn't do the soundtrack for 3. I don't know why. I think just Sam Raimi.
He didn't want to like Raimi, did he?
Yeah.
He only has eyes for Burton.
That's true.
Well, didn't Danny Elfman do...
He did Justice League, remember that?
Didn't Danny Elfman do Army of Darkness, the Sam Raimi film, anyway? I'm sure he did.
I will have a look right now in case he did.
I'm sure it was him. Anyway, that's not my point.
The music, right? No, Joseph Luduka
Oh, okay.
did the music for Army of
I
Darkness.
don't know why I got that idea. I could have sworn he had something to do with it.
It would be fitted to a Danny Elfman soundtrack.
That's what I thought.
Army of Darkness, what it is as a movie.
Anyway,
Not every choir that has oohs and ahs is Danny Elfman.
Anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah. Oh God, I feel really horrible because George has just had to go against Star Wars. But I think Chris was able to just pull his argument together a little bit more. I think, George, maybe when you were attacking it, you could have brought up the fact that it's essentially just a remake of The Hidden Fortress, and that might have strengthened your argument.
I couldn't say that.
You couldn't say. I think it might have helped you to say it, maybe. But I mean, again,
Flash Gordon.
Yeah, and that's. I think maybe you could have brought up that it took a lot. If it wasn't for the sort of Flash Gordons and Hidden Fortresses, we wouldn't have this film.
It's an unoriginal rehash.
Yeah, I mean, that angle could have been interesting to explore. There was a point that Chris made that was like, what was it? There was a specific point. It's just slipped my mind, but yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible to argue against Star Wars and the summer blockbuster that it is, but. I think you put up like a really valiant fight, but yeah, I have to give this one to Chris.
Yeah, I'd give it to Chris as well. I mean, you saying that Darth Vader is just a guy in a suit.
Well, he was in 1977.
Yeah, his name was David Prowse. Thank you very much.
No, he means in essence of the character. There wasn't really like much backstory to him. It was just
I know, but
okay. I didn't know. I thought you were being literal.
But yeah, the fact that with each Star Wars film, they have got better and better. I consider 6 to be my favorites. Whilst with the Spider-Man films, the next one, who did we get? Oh yeah, Emo Peter.
That's great.
Which was fantastic.
That's great.
Spider-Man 3, I will make a passionate defense. Only because off the back of Spider-Man 1 and 2 did people hate it. In 2007, you didn't get 8 comic book films a year. You got 1, it was Spider-Man 3. That today would still be great. But because there wasn't 8 comic book films a year to compare it to, everybody just has a gun for it. I'm sorry that I would much... You look at Spider-Man Homecoming, to compare that to Spider-Man 3, I'd rather take a bullet in
Okay, I just want to point out that I'm still the only person on the podcast who actually liked Spider-Man Homecoming.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
George, I'm surprised you didn't say about the argument that Luke Skywalker is essentially a Marty Stu,
No, he's not.
self-insert.
No, because he's not a Mary Sue, and neither is Ray.
Yes, she is.
I
would disagree there.
Hold on.
Luke is Marty Stu. I mean, Mark Hamill said that.
Hold on. We're going to get into an argument now. First of all, Luke's master died in the first film. He couldn't save his life. How on earth does that make him a Mary Sue?
Marty Stu.
Marty Stu, whatever you want to call it. Luke
the same with
he
Ray.
is a farm boy.
He's the one that comes from nothing and achieves everything.
To only just feel the force at the very end of the film. It's not like Ray, who kind of started with like a lightsaber fight into getting into.
She was older. No. She was older.
Like fuck, she was 22.
Luke was 19.
Okay, let's stop. Let's stop.
Brinsley spent most of my day playing Spider-Man on PS4. Same.
He also said it's getting heated. Don't want to leave.
I kind of wanted to let Tate finish because I agree with his points, but we will move on to the next fight, which is Jurassic Park versus T2.
Why do these fights happen?
I know, and I literally have no ammunition for this because we're pretty much level pegging on the...
Okay, Chris, free!
Wait, no.
Who's on timer? Because I'm fighting.
Oh, me. Sorry, my bad. I have a timer and a stopwatch ready.
Chris,
I believe up first. Up first is Jurassic Park, which is who, Chris?
It's me. Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, it is now. If it's not,
excellent. Right.
So my pick, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Right. 3, 2, 1, go.
My argument against T2 is that with obviously it being a sequel, we have had a Terminator before it, so we know what to expect from that. Jurassic Park took everyone by storm, and absolutely shook them in terms of what cinema could do. If you watch the behind the scenes with Steven Spielberg working on this movie with the computers, these huge, massive, cumbersome computers, no one really knows how to work them. In all honesty, they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants trying to get this movie made. And to get it made to the standard they did, with effects that still hold up 25 years later, is an absolute miracle. T2 is a great action movie, but inherently it is just an action movie. With Jurassic Park, it's way more than that, with what it did for cinema, with what it did for effects, and making these creatures feel very real. If you look at other dinosaur movies before this, they were always like the magnified ones or the Ray Harryhausen stop motion, King Kong style ones. So, I mean, this movie just came completely out of nowhere. Also, the fact that Steven Spielberg made this movie as he was working on another massive movie.
Go.
First of all, to dispel your argument of it being just a sequel, it went bigger. Not only that, but you previously said that actually you could watch it as a standalone movie. That is something that very little action films could actually do. Maybe a couple in recent years have tried to emulate it, but Terminator 2 is still the big doggy in charge of the lawn. Not only that, but the actual special effects that went into Terminator 2 could have possibly helped influence and kind of help progress the actual technology that they would have used for Jurassic Park. You've got the villain of the film, which is cold as ice. You can't argue with him. One of your villains in your film is a nerd wearing a yellow poncho. To say that this is the greatest action film of all time, comparing it up against your film, which is possibly one of the greatest family films of all time, it's very difficult to compare and decide on which one you would go for. But I would watch T2 any day of the week. On every single level, it is a better film. It has emotion, it has action.
And it's stop. Chris, go.
Okay, let's compare tone with your movies then. So we go into T2. T1 is a horror film. It's almost like a slasher movie. It's a dark thriller film. We go into T2. We're introduced to Arnold Schwarzenegger, walks out, puts shades on to Bad to the Bone. It already starts on a comedic note. So even there, as a continuation, the tone's all way off. Jurassic Park is consistent. It does have comedy, but by God, it has that horror and it has that tension. And it continues that all the way through, especially the kitchen scene at the end, which is one of the tensest scenes in cinema history.
Go.
And you're not saying that the scenes that are in Terminator 2 aren't tense? The car chases that actually happen, the practical effects and the visual effects that they actually use in the film are brilliant. You can't really compare it to its predecessor in many ways because it takes everything and makes it so much bigger and so much better. It completely defines the action genre. And if I'm going to see an action summer blockbuster, I just want to watch something with loud explosions and a good hero and a good villain. That is what this film delivers on. This is the quintessential summer blockbuster.
Yeah, but Jurassic Park had a car chase with a T-Rex.
Whoa, Chris.
We will discontinue that one opinion.
Yes, that's...
Is anyone ready?
No.
Is anyone?
I kind of zoned out a little bit because there was some big music news that I had to look up. But I kind of got the gist of it, and I feel like with it is two difficult films because I love both of them so much. But again, I do feel like I have to go with Jurassic Park. I feel like that is you were saying how the villain is basically just a guy in a poncho. Have you forgotten that there's dinosaurs trying to eat people?
I said one of the main villains.
Yeah, you said main villain.
I do think you said one of the main villains, in all fairness.
Still. I don't buy that. Especially since he gets eaten by a dinosaur as well.
So Tate lost the argument of T2 because he said that a villain in Jurassic Park...
Not just that, but I feel like he was just kind of trying to pick straws at that point, and I do love Chris just saying at the end, but they chased by T-Rex.
That wasn't part of the argument.
I know, but still.
Funny aside.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Ryan?
Oh God. Tate. I think it's Tate. There's barely anything to choose between those two arguments. The back and forth was again phenomenal. Tate, you've really upped your game today. I don't know what's going on, man. Like you took down the Dark Knight
I
earlier.
don't know what's going on.
Whatever you ate for breakfast, just do it again next time. But no, I mean, I actually, contrary to Naomi, I actually liked your point when you said one of the main villains in your film is what was it, a nerd in a jacket? I can't remember the exact line.
Poncho.
Yeah. But no, I mean, the points you made about your own film as well were fantastic. Again, like the arguments were both like more or less there, but if I mean, am I sure? Yeah, I'm sure.
Can we get that locked in?
It's locked in.
It's locked in to you, George.
So George has already written down who's going through to the next round, which is
no, I actually haven't. I'm trying to sort something out. They were both outrageously excellent arguments. Both arguments also failed to argue the concept of the summer blockbuster to be family versus action, which in this circumstance, in this bracket, has been very hard to argue when you've got two completely different films. So I've took that into account. And I haven't decided who I'm sending through.
Ramble.
I'm trying to remember the argument, but I kind of have already forgotten it because it was weak. I loved what Tate said about, your villain's just a nerd in a jacket. But then I felt quite disrespected, not because I'm a nerd, but because actually, as a villain, he literally set the entire island's dinosaurs loose, which is a lot more than what the T-1000 did.
But Chris didn't argue that.
I know he didn't argue that, but that's what I thought in my head. I wish that I had been Chris for this battle. I don't know. They were both equal.
That's what I mean.
I took personal preference out because one's an action film and the other is a dinosaur film.
I think, I did say like Terminator
it's impossible to compare.
Action film. Jurassic Park is the most loved family film.
Yeah, and that's the perfect comparison, but that doesn't help your argument. That doesn't help judging it either.
It really doesn't.
I'm trying to remember anything that stood out, but nothing really did. I'm sorry about this. I'm not normally this bad. I can't even put my thoughts out loud. I mean, both films made the point, but everything Tate said, there was.
Leave it to chance. Flip a coin.
No,
I'm not flipping a coin.
This is the big decider. Come on.
I feel as if a lot of what Tate said helped the other argument, but I don't feel that Chris argued it well enough. So I'm in this horrible dilemma where someone didn't argue well enough, but the other's argument helps this person on the other side.
So you're saying that Tate argued for Chris?
I feel that Tate actually made better points for Jurassic Park than Chris did by attempting to criticize Jurassic Park. So I'm in this horrific dilemma of who I send.
Can't we just send Tate through with Jurassic Park then?
He probably would do a good job of that.
I'd do a very good job.
I've been interested to see this argument on the other side around.
I'd literally I'd walk around the room like a T-Rex. Just walk around.
Right. I think after the entire argument, I'm going to have to send Jurassic Park 3 because I felt the argument for Jurassic Park. The argument for Jurassic Park was stronger, but only because Tate allowed it to be. So that's
you out like me.
Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I kind of do. I gave.
I'm as confused as myself. You helped him out too much.
So what do we have for the next round?
I'm gonna have to try and do a Photoshop now. Normally I've already got it done by now, but because I've only just decided, I'm actually. Oh God.
Okay, here we go. If we're stalling for time, I guess
I am out. I'm done.
You can join me in loser corner.
That's my pick's gone.
I guess what
Chris has 3 picks.
Has this happened before?
Yes, it did.
We've had 2.
I think everyone's done it at least once.
The first ever bracket.
Tate had TV.
I had 3 picks in the second.
I had it for sport. I've had it for a couple. It happens a lot, but then it's the fact that Chris has just done 4 arguments in a row. Now he's got another 2, minimum 3, because he's already got 2. So he's going to have no voice.
Someone else.
You will be able to make your choice for Star Wars v Jurassic Park about if you would like to defer one and whom to. And now I've just dawdled enough time. I should have an updated bracket. Brinsley, please comment who you think
kind of screen and reflection at the back behind you.
I have a reflection.
Yeah, reflection of your screen behind you.
Do I?
Like I could see what was happening on your screen because I can see a reflection in your bookcase.
Ah,
I can't see it.
I'm lost, but I've got a bracket now. Hold on. It's the same with finals.
Sorry, I'm saying gobbledygook. I had a long.
I'm in my own little world tonight.
I'm not awake.
Is it on? Is it the same? It's on the screen. We have Mission Impossible Fallout versus Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl, and we have Star Wars versus Jurassic Park.
And Atlantis is still through in the first round, apparently.
Yes,
that's my bad.
I'm through somehow.
That's my bad. I'm sorry.
That's cool. No worries.
Okay.
Chris, have you?
I'm not a total loser.
Here we go.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it. Mission Impossible versus Pirates of the Caribbean. Then.
This is going to be an interesting fight. Okay, you ready, George? 3, 2, 1, go.
It's almost impossible to compare these two films. One's a family film, the other's an action blockbuster. One focuses on CGI to create a skeleton crew, the other focuses on live action stunts. It's an impossible conundrum. How do we get into it? So you have to look at the films piece by piece. This is obviously the continuation of the Mission Impossible franchise, and Tate says a Mission Impossible to compare them. It's also true. Sorry for wasting time. The problem with Pirates of the Caribbean is that you don't care about anyone that's not the villain or the hero. Will and Turner and Elizabeth, they have a role. They're the love angle, but you don't care. When Jack Sparrow's trying to get with it, it's just like, oh, okay. Where's the rum gone? I've always hated that scene. I've never known why everyone's so obsessed with it, and it's cheap. Whereas mine, every character in this film has been written for a reason of importance to question stakes and whatnot. You've got the villain that's the hero and vice versa. The villain your villain is great on screen. Every minute he has is wonderful. Yours has got live action pirates that's battling. Mine has helicopter stunts.
And stop and go.
Every character in my movie, be it side character, be it comic relief character, be it main character, is there to serve a purpose, whether they're a traditional adventure story archetype like the love story with Will or Elizabeth, or the main comic protagonist, or the villain. They're all there for a reason and have a part to play in the movie. There is not one wasted character there. In terms of Mission Impossible, obviously Tom Cruise is the main guy, and then he has his crew, but or his team, I guess, not crew. That's more my terminology. But their roles in Mission Impossible kind of all blend into one. No one really has a definable role. Everyone can sort of kick ass. Everyone's like a whiz on the computer, even Tom Cruise himself. So the character dynamics kind of get skewed that way, whereas Pirates of the Caribbean is very clear. You also talk about the stunts and everything like that, and you kind of played up that the skeleton crew was CGI. Of course, that was CGI. That wouldn't have looked very convincing if it was all puppets and mannequins and everything like that. But they shot so much of it on location. They built ships. They put ships out there on the water, and they blew them all to hell. That's expensive. That is still very, very tough to do in terms of movie making.
And stop and go.
Like I said, everyone serves a purpose in mine. In yours, it's the stereotypical purpose. You know everyone's role from the get-go. With mine, there's question, there's intrigue. When Henry Cavill turns out the villain, is he the villain? Of course he's the villain. But then Angela Bassett's the head of CIA. You don't know if she's playing the cards or not in that twist scene. You don't know if she's evil, and you end up questioning other people's motives throughout the film. And then you get the return of the amazing villain. You have the beautiful car chase throughout Paris of them sinking the ship into the water, not sinking the van into the water, then escaping. The use of the cameras, the IMAX, all of it's beautiful.
And stop and go.
Mission Impossible 6 mired itself in too many villains. Henry Cavill, the CIA, you've got Solomon Lane. You don't need that with Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of the Caribbean, boom, Curse of the Black Pearl, you have Barbossa, and what a villain he is. He's an absolute powerhouse of a villain. He doesn't need people. He doesn't need side villains or anything like that. He has his crew and that's it. But in terms of him being the villain, he is the absolute powerhouse, and he's a great villain to offset the wacky protagonist that is Jack Sparrow. In this movie, Jack Sparrow is a lot more level-headed as well, so he feels more like a character and not the comic relief that he becomes in the future films.
And stop.
Yeah.
George, thank you for spoiling Mission Impossible.
It's in the trailer. It's in the fucking trailer. I did it in the review.
No, it's not, because the film raises the question: is it the CIA or is it Henry Cavill?
Cavill shooting at Tom Cruise from a helicopter, like he's the villain.
Could be good editing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Don't worry, Tate. You'll forget this.
That's fine.
Either way, those kind of really black ones.
I am still going to give this to Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yes, you should.
Bar the spoiling George, your argument's been so solid. What happened?
I couldn't criticize Pirates of the Caribbean
That's what I was.
I get that. I get that. You backed off so hard, and you even
because
backed
I
off on
physically,
your own...
I had more to say about Star Wars than Pirates of the Caribbean.
You backed off on your own kind of hyping up of Mission Impossible.
Because Pirates of the Caribbean's too strong.
You basically just handed him that round.
I know, because I couldn't criticize it.
Yeah.
So all my best victories come from crushing the opposition. I literally couldn't say anything about that. What can you say about its quality?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Tate because I was just waiting for the standard George tearing apart rebuttal. Where was it? Yeah, I think like by the end of this, you had ended up repeating yourself a lot of the time and saying the same points that you have with the other arguments, which is okay if you want to reiterate your point, but there was nothing really to say, especially when it came to like looking more realistic. I mean, with the skeletons crew, even though it's CGI, that still looks realistic, and that they're actually there and they're actually skeletons. So
they're amazing. They're motion capture.
Hold on,
exactly.
quick.
Like I said, I can't criticize it.
Hold on. So what we're saying here is Chris has probably won in the quickest time possible with 3 picks left. He's somehow won the bracket already.
It's happened in the past.
Yeah,
it's been a
long time since I've won though, I think. Was it the best soundtracks was the last one I won?
I was on a
best
good
score.
streak.
Best score, maybe?
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
Best Disney song, maybe.
We still have 2 more arguments. We have 2 more battles.
Yes, that's true.
And we have Ryan picking, I'm assuming he picked Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, I picked George. His argument was flawed.
Oh, really?
No. I really wanted to, when I was making notes, I was trying to make notes on my phone, which is what I normally do, but my phone's on low battery, so it's just like playing up. So I had to resort to my computer, so hang on to me. Yeah, I mean, Chris made a really good point about, I think Georgie slagged off the skeleton crew, and then Chris in his rebuttal made the really good point about how, yeah, obviously they had to use CGI to get it, but he talked about how they really effectively use like location shooting and actual like props and ships and things like that. And then as well, he made a really good point about the villains and how he said, you know, like Pirates has his one villain who like the whole film is built up around this one villain, whereas he said, I haven't seen it, so I'm obviously just going off the strength of the argument, but he said Mission Impossible has like so many like side villains and stuff, so it's hard to build up to like the catharsis of having just one villain be taken down at the end.
And that's
I wasn't criticizing skeletons. I was just trying to make the point that it was a completely different film that CGI versus stunts.
Oh, okay, I get it.
I love the skeleton crew.
One of my favorite bits about the skeleton crew is actually in the behind the scenes of Return of the King in the appendices. It's when they try to like.
I thought you were talking about Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, well, it is linked with Pirates of the Caribbean. They try to get a look down for the Army of the Dead, and they're trying to go through all ideas. And Pirates of the Caribbean came out earlier that year. Peter Jackson's just like, fuck, like, what are we going to do now? Just make him green. Just make him see-through and green. There we go.
Ghosts.
Okay. So, here we go. Chris. Your 2 picks. It's Star Wars versus Jurassic Park.
So I need to be schizophrenic right now and argue with myself.
You need to pick someone. You need to pick someone to argue for you.
Oh, okay.
Or you can pick 2 different people to argue for you for your 2 different points.
You really want to argue for one of them, don't you, Tate?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I'd let Chris. Chris gets to pick.
George did say that he thinks he could have argued Jurassic Park better than me, so let's put him to the test. I'm going to give Jurassic Park.
Okay.
Because he says he's got some arguments against original Star Wars as well, so I'd like to hear those in this discussion.
I want more poncho guy in a poncho talk.
Okay, are you ready?
No, because I actually think George might win.
No, you're first.
Yes, I am first.
Yeah, I'm fighting Star Wars, man. Come on.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh wait, no, wait. Hang on, I'm first. Okay, okay.
Stop in the
Star Wars is first. Star Wars is first. Okay, I got it.
Come on now, Chris.
Okay.
Get on it, son.
I got it.
Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Jurassic Park may be an okay adventure movie for kids, but Star Wars really is that movie that hits all ages. It completely changed the generation. It continues to do that. In terms of, I mean, the special effects are great in Jurassic Park. I'm not going to take that away from it, but even the effects in Star Wars, model making, making those small little models or bigger chairs larger than life. The opening shot, do I need to say more about that? The originality in Star Wars, despite taking various tropes and character arcs and things like that, it really did make its own world. It made an entire universe, a very, very expansive universe from this one little movie. We'd had space, you know, we'd had the likes of Flash Gordon, we'd had sci-fi before, but this really changed. This made it palatable, and this made it a summer blockbuster. And we're arguing for best summer blockbuster. Star Wars has that hands down. Memorable characters, a great bad guy, a very simple plot, but an effective plot. Also, in terms of the movie making, the originality with the aliens, the landscapes, the vehicles, everything.
And go.
You were talking about creatures and stuff, mate. There was a life-size animatronic T-Rex. You cannot compare to size when there is that roaming around on a film set. Speaking of originality of Star Wars, don't get me wrong, Star Wars is original. It's like we said, it's a combination of loads of other things. The only reason Star Wars was made was because George Lucas couldn't get the rights to Flash Gordon. Whereas you look at dinosaurs, you know, dinosaurs have been done on film, like the puppeteering and whatnot. But the level it was done, for the very first time, dinosaurs were real. They were real, and everyone flocked to the cinema because the first time in their life they wanted to see dinosaurs on the big screen. And, you know, Star Wars did become a universe, but Jurassic Park ended up being a franchise about a park, a tiny park in a little South American island. Whereas yours was a grand universe. There's a lot more story to tell of this. Whereas Jurassic Park, time has gone by. Star Wars got better as time got by. Nothing's ever topped Jurassic Park in the 4 films that have come since then. Whereas you go back to Jurassic Park, you know, it's Steven Spielberg, the greatest director in history, doing what he does best, being able to make this film and make it an adventure as well. It's a family adventure. You've got kids there. Adults go to the cinema to watch.
And stop.
Kids love it.
And rebuttal, go.
Star Wars is also a family adventure. And then you've also got to argue, which do you think is more impressive? One great animatronic dinosaur or an entire world filled with many, many animatronics? Sheer amount of manpower to get this film made. And in terms of just like being a film, in terms of everyone coming together in an idea that a lot of people didn't believe in, everyone thought it was ridiculous. The arduous task of filming in Tunisia, everything like that. But the result shows. And, you know, with Jurassic Park, yes, it did advance computer technology, but it was technology that was already present.
And go.
There was more than one animatronic dino. There was one T-Rex. There was velociraptors. There was a Triceratops. There was multiple things. And if they couldn't make it in puppets, that's when they went to this. That's when they had to do CGI to make it physically possible to look real. And you got to think with Jurassic Park, Star Wars grew as a franchise. With Jurassic Park, Industrial Light and Magic did both these, but Jurassic Park is what spawned future Star Wars films. Lucas had no interest in doing more Star Wars until Jurassic Park came out, until Spielberg made one of the greatest films. Both films went on to become the highest grossing film in history at the time they were released, that's granted. However, Jurassic Park maintained that. I didn't get to finish that sentence.
Just out of curiosity, how would you have finished that sentence?
I was going to say it maintained it for a similar amount of time because Titanic then came out in 97 after 93. E.T. came out after Star Wars.
Okay, fair enough.
It's just because it sounds really bad when it cuts there.
Yeah, that was a difficult fight. I think George actually did a really good job fighting for Jurassic Park. However, I'm still going to have to give it to Star Wars. It was a close argument, but really Chris overpowered you with just everything that Star Wars is.
When Star Wars used to mean something, now it means
it means something. No, it's more now.
It means porgs.
Yeah, it means money.
Star Wars was money back then.
It means your mum jokes now. Not in my Star Wars.
Not my Star Wars. Hashtag that.
I'm being selfish. It's my Star Wars. It's mine. It's my name on it.
Would you like some good news? The Last Jedi is currently the highest grossing DVD selling of the year and has sold more than Black Panther and is on track
because
to
people are doing all analysis on it and need the DVD rip so they can slag the movie off. That's why.
No, legally bought copies, not
It's all going to be Star Wars and superhero movies. That's what the whole YouTube critic circle is now, isn't it?
Well, that's all the movies that we have on offer pretty much now. Who else wants to weigh in then? And then we'll get through to the final.
I mean, I'm just going to... George, that was a phenomenal argument. Why didn't you pick Jurassic Park?
Because we sat in the cinema and Chris took it before me. Jurassic Park was...
I took T2 before Chris could take T2, and then yeah, I'm pretty sure Chris took Jurassic Park before George could take it. Because Jurassic Park was his number one pick on
this is my list. Jurassic Park, hold on, let me find it first. There, number 2.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, the both arguments are like were insanely well structured. I think Chris's opening about what was it in the yeah, I mean, you mentioned the opening shot again, but then you said that was an amazing point when you said it created its own world. Like the world of Star Wars didn't exist until this film, and this film is what was able to spawn possibly the biggest franchise out there at the minute. One of them, definitely. And then you made a really good point about the plot. You know, it's simple but effective. Like it's a plot that anyone can follow. And then George's rebuttal was like, it's a really good point because you said Star Wars had a whole universe to work with, but Jurassic Park just had this one island, but they made it work and they've managed to create like a world that I feel like everyone could feel like it's a tangible thing. Do you know what I mean? Like you could think about Jurassic Park and you think, wow, that would actually work. That's something that if it could be done would be a real marketable thing that people would go to. I think, I don't know. I think I want to give it to George. I think he actually argued it so well.
Okay.
All right.
Tiebreaker.
It's deciding me again.
Come on. Who's going through?
Okay. Oh gosh, it's really difficult because George's argument skills came back and were furious, but at the same time, your defense of Star Wars was still great. So it really is a difficult one. And again, I love both movies. And I think the one I'm going to go for, and this isn't because I just have the shirt of it, but because I think I'm wearing the shirt now, but it's because Chris did say about how like it is become a franchise. And even though George has said Jurassic Park was a franchise spawned from a tiny island, yeah, looking at the difference between how well each film's sequels have done, I think Star Wars kind of wins on that one.
Okay.
I did say it for better. I did say that.
Oh yeah, you also made that really good point that Jurassic Park is like I don't know if I think it's actually counterproductive, but Jurassic Park is like the peak of that franchise. Like it doesn't get better after that one. But obviously for me, Empire's the best Star Wars film, so it actually technically does get better after Star Wars. So.
Okay, so that brings us to the final then, which is both of my picks. This is weird.
Oh my gosh, I never would have guessed.
It's Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl versus Star Wars, or Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
So, Chris, which one would you... I'm not going to lie. I know that you really want to take Star Wars, but I think you should probably take Pirates of the Caribbean on this one.
I'm thinking of taking Pirates of the Caribbean, and I was thinking of giving you Star Wars, Tate, if you want to argue.
You wanted me to have Star Wars, okay.
Well, you know, I just
He totally wasn't setting you up for that.
I gave George a chance with Jurassic Park. I thought I'd give you a chance with Star Wars, if you want to argue it.
Okay. Yeah.
If not, I can give Star Wars to Naomi.
No, I'd happily take Star Wars.
You will happily take Star Wars. Okay.
He knows I will lose if I take Star Wars.
It doesn't matter because I win either way. It's fine. It's just a question of which movie we want to see on top. So rules for the final. Exactly the same structure. We just add more time if necessary. I think it used to be a requirement. Now it's if necessary. So we give everyone slightly extra time. So it's 1.5 minutes for the main argument and it's 1 minute for the rebuttal. So it's essentially 30 seconds added on to each section of the argument. I guess I'm up first with Pirates of the Caribbean. This is going to be insane going up against Star Wars. I don't even know how I'm going to structure this, but
and you maybe do it twice.
Maybe yes.
Well.
Am I on the timer? Sorry.
Yeah, you're on the timer.
That's my bad. 1.5 minutes, beginning with Chris. Go.
Both of these movies obviously have great practical effects work, also borrowed from like traditional tropes from like old adventure serials and everything like that. But I think Pirates of the Caribbean has the edge because it is, I hate to bring dates into it, but it is kind of that modern blockbuster. It still definitely holds up with Star Wars, especially if you're going with the original theatrical. There's a lot that doesn't work. There's a lot that's ropey, and it was a movie that was kind of cobbled together in the editing room. I think by most of the admission of some of the cast and crew, that film was put together in the editing suite. Pirates of the Caribbean went in with a plan, and it was bold. I mean, Star Wars did have this whole blueprint of elements that were cherry-picked, whereas Pirates of the Caribbean, all they had to go on was a fairground ride. They had that, and from that, they crafted the story they did that really went over with people and made these really likable characters that have gone on to have, you know, sequels and sequels and sequels after this. I think that Jack Sparrow as a protagonist is a much more likable one than Luke Skywalker. I think when it comes to Star Wars, the supporting characters definitely elevate that movie than it does on the grounds of just Luke Skywalker on his own. Obviously, he went on to become a great character, but if we're going from that first movie, Jack Sparrow, everyone loved. And unlike other Pirates of the Caribbean movies, this is actually Jack Sparrow's story. In all the other movies, he's kind of just like thrown into the adventure. This one feels more personal to him because this is a vendetta. He's been slighted. His ship's been taken from him, his crew, and he needs to get his status back as Captain Jack Sparrow. So it feels a lot more personal that way. And he feels like a real character in this one. And I think that's why it went over a lot with people. Also, his performance as well. No one had seen that. It was an absolutely inspired decision by Johnny Depp to go in with that kind of Mick Jagger. Oh, okay.
Stop. I take you get 1 minute 40.
Oh, brilliant. Beautiful.
3, 2, 1, go. That was my bad.
Whenever I bring up Star Wars, the original Star Wars, my dad always talks about how when he was a kid, he went to go see it for the first time, and he was simply just blown away by the first shot. And he said the first shot alone had him hooked in, and that was him being a Star Wars fan straight from the off. What you've got to understand is the fact that Star Wars wasn't just a blockbuster that was a space opera and this one-time thing that could come in and just kind of fill in the void of the summer. This really was the biggest and best like summer blockbuster of all time. You'd said previously that it brought in elements from other films, but it also brought in elements of joy and elements of pure wonderment and pure imagination that could flood into everyone who watched it. I'm sure that a lot of people who, when they first saw Star Wars, they immediately wanted to hold a lightsaber or go out and be adventurous and go out and do things that could make you emulate the actual Star Wars film itself. My experiences with Pirates of the Caribbean were that I enjoyed the film as a kid, and sure, I still enjoy the first film as an adult, but looking at it from a more critiqued perspective, I find it a very flawed kind of film. I've already said that the supporting characters are not there for that film, and you do need the supporting characters because, once again, otherwise it's just Jack Sparrow on his own. And sure, it was an inspired, different performance to what we'd seen previously. But come on, we're looking at the grand scheme of themes here. We're not looking at a single performance. We're looking at the best blockbuster.
Chris, 45 seconds now.
Okay, you want to talk best summer blockbuster? Let's talk best summer blockbuster. We have to really address what the essence of that term is. And it's that sense of escapism, it's that fun, it's that thrill. Now, if we're arguing which was around before, the kind of swashbuckling Errol Flynn kind of movies or sci-fi, of course it was Errol Flynn, the whole swords clashing and everything like that. That's what people gravitated towards back in the day. And Pirates of the Caribbean is evident with how much money it made, with the sequels that it spawned, is still what people like today. It rejuvenated a dead franchise now, a dead genre, whereas Star Wars sci-fi was around at that point. Now, maybe not the pew-pew laser beams, or maybe even was, but not to the scale of Star Wars. But the point is, it was still there. It was in the collective consciousness.
With Pirates of the Caribbean, it rejuvenated the franchise. Sure, it revived something that was once dead. Star Wars changed it forever. It completely turned what people would think of a film on its head, with the amazing, mind-blowing effects that people hadn't seen at the time. It was phenomenal. You can't even put it into perspective. Pirates of the Caribbean went and took something that was a small ride and turned it into a big film for that summer and a big film for the next few years with its ongoing sequels. Star Wars is huge today. It's the biggest thing on the planet, possibly even. It is massive, and the effect that it had on the summer that it was released and the effect that it has today shows that it is the best summer blockbuster of all time. There is very little argument in that.
Solo made how much?
Oh, that was
point disqualified.
Did we even discuss Solo?
Yes, it's great.
It's got more than it.
People saw it.
Sure.
Okay.
Darth Maul was pretty cool, though. Like,
yeah, that's right.
Why did he come back?
Because
why
he
not?
survived in Clone Wars and Rebels.
Dead. He's
No, he survived in Clone Wars and Rebels.
and met his maker.
I read Wikipedia 2 days ago. His hate and his will to live kept him alive.
Yeah.
Now that's stupid writing.
That's canon. Maybe the Empress.
That was George Lucas's writing and Dave Filoni, two of the best Star Wars writers in history.
Oh yeah, same person who wrote I don't like sand, it's coarse.
It's a great line. It's a great line.
everywhere.
That line is more memorable than 90% of modern cinema.
That is true.
Just
Okay,
remember
so
to-
Lucas.
what? Who's winning?
Is anyone ready?
I can
I
go.
think so. Do you want to go first, Ryan?
Yeah, I can do. Tate, you absolutely crushed that one for me. I think it's really. I mean, Chris, your argument was great, but I mean, again, with what's been the problem a lot of the night is you're arguing against Star Wars, and then what was it? Tate made a really good point when he said, like pirates lacked characters outside of the leads. Like you take away Jack Sparrow, like who's in that film. And then he also said, you made a point. What was it about? How it like pirates like brought the pirate genre back to life, like give it new life. But then Tate just instantly shut it down with the fact that Star Wars changed that genre forever. Every sci-fi film now is like, it's somehow somewhere along the line it's intrinsically influenced by Star Wars, or if it doesn't look like a Star Wars sci-fi, like the people that made it were influenced by Star Wars growing up, or like they'd seen it and that's how it was. But I still think your points in the structure again of your argument, like you always have like phenomenal arguments, so
Thanks.
you always make it really close. But yeah, I mean, I think Tate. So again today, Tate, what have you done, man? Like,
don't know. If I had chosen better picks, then I feel like I could have won today.
I mean,
You needed to steal Chris's sheet.
I needed. Do you know what I needed? I needed Star Wars, and I possibly needed something. Actually, no. I'm happy with the choice I picked. I'll stand by my decision. I still think Grease is great.
No.
Who wants to?
I'll go next.
Okay.
I think Tate lost it for me because he said that Pirates of the Caribbean went from this tiny theme park ride to something big, and he did mention that it became something big, and that is Pirates of the Caribbean for me.
I did mention that Star Wars is the biggest thing now.
And the way that Chris did say that it did revitalize an entire genre. Sure, Star Wars was defining genres, but I think Pirates of the Caribbean was able to capitalize and evolve on that and change action genres in the 21st century. So, yeah.
Okay, George has the decider.
Well done.
I have already decided. I decided about 5 minutes ago. Chris, you've took Pirates of the Caribbean to a new. I was going to say, after there's a really shitty Pirates of the Caribbean title, isn't there? I'm trying to read my Blu-ray.
New Horizon,
Stranger Tides.
On Stranger Tides. I don't know. I've lost what I was going to say. And I kind of thought that he took it this far. Let's listen to what he's got to say about Star Wars, and he said some really good things about Pirates of the Caribbean. However, he's fighting Star Wars. Now that's a tough call, and he now knows how hard that really is.
Yeah.
And the problem is that Tate won it for me when he spoke about the supporting cast. You got Han Solo and these other people, and both films in their own right. It's hard to compare anything to Star Wars because Star Wars spawned 40 years of cinema for what it is today. It all comes down to that. Did ILM do the VFX in Pirates of the Caribbean?
Yeah, I think they did, didn't they?
And what ILM was created to make what film Star Wars? It's an impossible task to argue against. It's so hard to argue against that. I think Tate had too much ammunition. That's because Star Wars has just that ammunition. It's so much harder to talk down. Whereas I think Tate made the right criticisms to have made the better argument.
Yeah.
So I have to give it to Tate. But in theory, Chris wins anyway. It's his pick.
Yeah.
I'll happily take the fact that that's the second final that I've won using someone else's pick. Does that count as a win yet?
No.
Do I need to collect 5 wins from other people's picks to actually make it a win?
Yes.
You need to win.
Okay.
Imagine if you'd have picked. Did we have the order of who was picking what when we did the draft? Tate, you picked Grease first, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked Grease first if it was like if I had first pick overall. No way.
I had first pick. I did Dark Knight, which clearly lost. Chris, your first pick was Star Wars.
Star Wars, yeah, was my first.
I would have taken Jurassic Park or Terminator.
You could have took Jurassic Park. You could have took Jurassic Park. It wasn't.
Oh yeah, shit, I could have. No, wait, no, I couldn't have because I had 4th pick.
Yeah, but in round 1, Tate's first choice was Star Wars, second choice Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you're right.
Do we have a final picture?
We do have a final picture. We have a Star Wars win. And do you remember what happened last time Star Wars went up against Pirates of the Caribbean? I do.
I remember only too well.
Star Wars is the greatest summer blockbuster of all time. And let's be honest, the right-hand side of the bracket is far superior to the left.
Except Atlantis is still winning, apparently.
I need to change it. Yes. I keep forgetting to Photoshop it.
Yay, I won!
Okay, congratulations, Chris. Do we know what the next bracket might possibly be? I know we tend to brainstorm on here.
We tend to do it month by month, sort of like tie it vaguely. We wanted to do this one because obviously we're into September now, end of August, bookended the end of summer movie season. But I don't know. It's pretty dead for movies.
I mean,
know
we've
just
done
do a Halloween film.
I was about to say,
Yes.
Halloween-based films or holiday-based films.
And it doesn't just have to be Christmas.
best horror film. You guys aren't really horror guys, though, are you? So I don't know.
Oh, but okay, Chris,
horror.
come on now. You know that I would obviously pick like the psychological horrors.
Yeah, as would I. So that would be fun. But
also,
no, we haven't really.
We've done best film score, but we haven't done best film soundtrack.
Mm-hmm.
You could do jukebox soundtracks, yeah, like Baby Driver or Guardians of the Galaxy.
American Graffiti. There's not really many though. American
jukebox
I think there's a lot. There's a whole.
Dazed and Confused, Boogie
Rock
Nights.
of Ages. Rock of Ages wins.
No, that's a jukebox musical, and it should burn in hell.
I'm going to take Tom Cruise. To
Burn it in hell.
Oh my god, we should totally do best musical.
Oh no, I'm going to commit suicide.
Yes,
I
let's
will
do best
happily
musical.
fight against Rock of Ages, and I'll tell you so many reasons why it is one of the worst musicals and one of the worst jukebox musicals out there.
Can we make it a musical episode?
Can we?
Yeah,
oh my
right.
god.
I think we do musicals next.
Best musical.
Some form of musical.
Oh, that'd be good. That'd be good. But yes, Oh, there we go. That's going to be the argument.
I know.
We try and make Battle of the Brackets impartial, but we might have to do some creative shuffling there to get George retake with that one.
And then you get me versus Rock of Ages.
Before we hang up, I guess, like, while we're all together, we may as well do a brief update. Obviously, it's not anything coming to an end, but there is going to be probably some changes for the next couple of months. I'm going to hand over to George.
Yes, so I have been fortunate enough to get a new job, which is great. However, due to this, I have to move away. Obviously, I live at home, as you can probably tell with all my stuff. I've basically, from next Saturday, the role I take upon, Monday to Fridays are written out for anything I do. Socially, I can't have anything planned Monday to Friday because of the nature of the industry I'll be working in. So I've kind of spoke to the other guys and I've said, I get weekends off guaranteed, which is perfect. I can finally get a Cineworld card and get my unlimited screenings. I've said this for a long time. I've been waiting for this day to come. But it does mean that in the future, if I'm here, which obviously I will want to be, it will be weekends, and it's just going to mean that, sometimes we can pop on like 1, 2 in the morning for breaking news. Little things like that might change. It's not as drastic as I thought it would be because that weekend slot is very nice. And I don't start till 10 a.m. in the morning, so actually I can be up a little bit later than I need to be. But that is something that's going to happen for the first time. Well, actually, it's the first time I moved in my life. So I've got an accommodation sorted. I know there's fast Wi-Fi. I know the size of my room. I don't have concerns as to what I had sort of 3 weeks ago. I'm going to be quite confident if I'm on headset and stuff, I'm not being too loud and whatnot, but you won't get the sort of screaming, laughing, which I've done in the past. So it's a minor update that I'm moving away, and you might not see less of me because, let's be honest, this year's been dead. There's not really been an awful lot to do, but I think it's more the fact I will be binging cinema trips on Saturdays to get these films out now, which is going to be very depressing because I'm so used to my release dates on the opening day in the nice quiet morning. All that has got to come to an end. But one of the reasons I want to get this out was because it's not a farewell at all. It's more of a I'm around, but not as much. But it's good to have us all on, and we know that Tate will be back in the mountains soon. Well, I say soon. Is it December?
December. Yes,
but it's September now, so everything's creeping up so quick. But that being said, I'm still around, and if there's a Battle of the Brackets, of course, I'm still doing some channel artwork. I'll still be on the Photoshops and whatnot, but you won't see this again you will see something new. To which I need to. I can't even like decorate. The one time I'm going to be in a room I could put posters up, I can't, which is heartbreaking.
We are also renaming George. George is now no longer George. As a new person, he gets to decide his own brand new name.
Hey. Huh? Oh, I'll be George the Second.
George the Second. See, Georgie.
You know, we'll all be together when that comes out. But yeah, no, as pretty much everything George said, like we tend to do movie reviews on the weekend anyway.
Yeah, we used to do them like solid on release days, but now it is that sort of we do the weekends.
It tended to be like the Marvel movies if they came out midweek or any midnight screenings. The only difference is you're going to see them at the weekend probably. So yeah, it's not a goodbye. It's not a farewell. It's
I'm going to have to not see Infinity War Part 2 for like 2 days.
Oh no, shock.
Oh.
How bad for
But
you.
I'm using a week of annual leave for Star Wars 9.
Mm-hmm.
No questions. That's another year away though, isn't it? So yeah, that's my kind of thing. We will be back, and there will be some good stuff going on. But that's just an update that kind of needs to be said in case things go a little bit quiet. But everything is coming with me, not the Mac, the laptop, but I've got a hard drive so I can bring my entire folders on and whatnot. The microphone comes to anyway. That's me overloading on info. I'm very excited about what comes next, but that does end it for tonight for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you to everyone tonight on the panel, and Ryan for coming back to judge as well. Always appreciate giving you time up, man. It's great to see you on Battle of the Brackets. Thanks to Naomi, and obviously Tate and George, you're kind of like lumped into this with me anyway. So but yeah, I don't know what videos we've got coming out. I think we've got a Black Klansman review coming Sunday, because I'm working tomorrow, so unfortunately can't get to see that. I'll see that Sunday. Look out for that. And then after that, I will be getting back into trailer reaction videos again with trailers. They've been relatively dead like the last couple of weeks, so hopefully they pick up soon with some big movies coming out towards the end of the year. We'll still be bringing you movie reviews and everything like that, so do hit that subscribe button, hit the bell icon as well. When we go live on the live streams, you'll get a little notification at the top of the screen. And yeah, that'll do it from us. So till the next video, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.